The text message glowed on the screen. "I'm not coming. Found someone better." Daniel Hayes stared at it, alone at a table set for two in the city's most exclusive restaurant, 41 years old, billions in the bank, and stood up like a teenager at prom. Then he heard her voice. "Your blind date didn't show up either?" He looked up. A young woman in a threadbare coat stood beside the neighboring table, her own seat conspicuously empty. Two strangers, two rejections. One impossible night. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover why this one evening changed everything. Hit that like button and let's begin. The Chateau Bleu wasn't just expensive. It was exclusive in the way that made even wealthy men check their bank accounts twice. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's houses cast soft amber light across tables draped in Italian linen. The air itself seemed to cost money, perfumed with white truffles and aged wine, with the quiet murmur of the elite conducting business over $30 appetizers. Daniel Hayes sat perfectly still at table 17, his hands folded on the pristine white tablecloth, watching condensation roll down the side of his untouched water glass. 7:43 p.m. She was 43 minutes late. His phone lay face up beside his silverware, the screen dark now, but the message still burned in his mind. "I'm not coming. Found someone better. Sorry, not sorry." Melissa Bradford, daughter of a tech mogul, Harvard educated, introduced through mutual connections who insisted they were perfect for each other. He'd never met her before tonight, but her Instagram had shown a woman who knew exactly how beautiful she was and precisely what that beauty could buy. Apparently, it could buy her better options than him. Daniel almost smiled at the irony. Almost. The waiter appeared for the fourth time, his professional concern barely masking pity. "Sir, perhaps I could bring you—" "I'm fine, Marcus, thank you." "Of course, sir." The waiter retreated and Daniel caught him whispering to another server near the kitchen. The glances came next, staff trying not to stare at the man dining alone at a table meant for romance. He should leave, he knew that. There was no dignity in sitting here, waiting for someone who'd already sent her rejection via emoji. But something kept him in his seat. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the fact that going home meant walking into that enormous, empty house where every room echoed with absence. His daughter Emma was at a sleepover tonight. She'd been so excited, practically bouncing as she packed her overnight bag that afternoon. At 9 years old, she was finally old enough for these adventures, and Daniel had encouraged her to go, to have fun, to be a normal kid, which left him alone. Again. The restaurant's ambiance wrapped around him like expensive fog, soft jazz from invisible speakers, the gentle clink of crystal, the low conversations of people who belonged in places like this. Daniel had been coming to Chateau Bleu for years. He'd closed deals here, celebrated acquisitions, entertained investors who needed to be impressed. But he'd never been here on a blind date. Never been here as just a man hoping for connection. "Excuse me?" The voice was soft, almost hesitant, and completely unexpected. Daniel looked up. A young woman stood beside the table next to his, table 18, her hand resting on the back of an empty chair. She couldn't have been more than 26, 27. Her coat was wool, dark blue, clean but clearly worn with a small tear near the left pocket that had been carefully mended. No designer labels. No jewelry except for a simple silver chain around her neck. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her face held an expression caught between embarrassment and something that looked like relief. "I'm sorry to bother you," she continued, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's ambient noise. "But I noticed you're sitting alone, and I'm sitting alone, and I thought maybe—" She gestured helplessly between their two tables. "Your blind date didn't show up either?" Daniel blinked, caught completely off guard. The woman's cheeks flushed. "I'm sorry. That was presumptuous. I saw you checking your phone, and you looked the way I feel, so I thought—" She started to turn away. "Forget I said anything. I'm sorry." "Wait," Daniel heard himself say. She paused, looking back at him with eyes that were remarkably clear. No makeup, no artifice, just genuine uncertainty. "You're right," he admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. "My blind date sent me a text message 45 minutes ago. Apparently, she found someone better. A flicker of understanding crossed the woman's face. Mine didn't even bother with a message. He just never showed up. I've been sitting here for an hour pretending to study the menu while the staff tries not to feel sorry for me. They looked at each other across the narrow space between their tables, two strangers united by the peculiar humiliation of being stood up in an overpriced restaurant. "I'm Daniel," he offered. "Iris," she replied. Then, with a small, self-deprecating smile, "Iris Lane, and I probably shouldn't even be here. This place it's a lot." Daniel glanced around the restaurant, trying to see it through her eyes. The casual opulence, the prices that weren't even listed on the menu. If you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The subtle hierarchies in the seating arrangements, the way certain tables commanded better views, better service, better everything. "It is a lot," he agreed. "Would you like to sit down?" Iris hesitated, her fingers tightening on the back of the chair. "At your table? Why not? We're both dressed up with nowhere to go. Might as well suffer through it together." For a moment, he thought she'd refuse, thought she'd make some polite excuse and flee back to wherever she came from, back to a world that didn't include restaurants where the breadbasket cost $18. But then she nodded. "Okay, yes, thank you." She moved to his table with careful steps, as if afraid of disturbing the expensive air, and settled into the chair across from him. Up close, Daniel noticed more details. The way her coat, though clean, had been worn thin at the cuffs. The fact that her shoes, black flats, had been resoled at least once. The absence of any designer labels, any status symbols, any of the markers that usually define people in places like this. And yet, there was a dignity to her that transcended economics. She sat straight-backed, met his eyes directly, carried herself with a quiet grace that money couldn't buy. Marcus materialized instantly, his professional mask perfectly in place. "Good evening, miss. May I bring you something to drink?" Iris glanced at the wine list on the table, and Daniel saw her eyes widen fractionally at the prices. "Just water, please." "Thank you." "Still or sparkling?" "Oh, still is fine." The waiter nodded and disappeared. "I'm sorry," Iris said immediately, her voice low. "I should have asked what you were drinking. I don't really drink, and—" "Water's perfect," Daniel interrupted gently. "I'm not drinking either." They sat in silence for a moment, the strangeness of the situation settling over them like snow. "So," Iris finally said, "how did you end up on a blind date in a place like this?" Daniel considered lying, considered spinning some story that would make him seem less pathetic. But something about her directness invited honesty. "Friends set it up," he admitted. "They said it was time I started dating again. That my daughter needed to see me move on with my life." He paused. "What about you?" Iris's laugh was soft and self-conscious. "My coworker. She said I needed to get out more, meet new people. She set me up with her boyfriend's friend, said he was perfect for me." She gestured at the empty restaurant around them. "He suggested this place. I looked it up online and almost canceled, but she convinced me to give it a chance. And then he didn't show up." "And then he didn't show up," she confirmed. "I think maybe he saw me arrive and decided to cut his losses. That would make him an idiot." The words came out before Daniel could stop them, and Iris's eyes widened slightly. A blush crept across her cheeks. "You don't know that," she said quietly. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you showed up," Daniel replied. "I know you waited an hour for someone who didn't have the courtesy to send even a brief text. I know you're sitting here now, in a restaurant that's clearly outside your comfort zone, talking to a complete stranger instead of going home to lick your wounds in private. That tells me enough." Iris studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, "Your daughter, how old is she?" The change of subject was deliberate, but Daniel welcomed it. 9. Her name's Emma. She's at a sleepover tonight, which is why I had time for this disaster of an evening. Is it just the two of you?" "Yes. Her mother—" Daniel paused, the familiar grief rising like tide. "Her mother passed away 3 years ago, ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they found it." "I'm so sorry," Iris said, and the way she said it, simple, direct, without the elaborate condolences people usually offered, made it feel genuine. "Thank you. It's been hard for both of us, but we're managing." Is that why your friends set you up on a blind date to help you manage? Daniel smiled despite himself. Something like that. They think I work too much, that I've become too isolated, that Emma needs to see me as more than just her father. What do you do? For work? It was an innocent question, the kind people asked when making small talk, but it landed like a grenade in Daniel's chest. This was the moment when he had to decide who to be. Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Enterprises, with a net worth that put him on Forbes lists and made him recognizable to anyone who followed business news. Or just Daniel, a single father, a man sitting alone in a restaurant. I work in investments, he said carefully. Corporate acquisitions mostly. It's boring stuff. Doesn't sound boring, sounds important. Important and boring aren't mutually exclusive. Iris smiled, the first real smile she'd offered since sitting down. It transformed her face, softening the careful control she'd been maintaining. That's fair. I work at a call center during the day and wait tables at night. Definitely boring, definitely not important. I doubt that's true. Which part? The unimportant part. Someone depends on you for that income. The smile faded, replaced by something more guarded. How do you know that? You're working 2 jobs. No one does that for fun. Iris looked down at her hands, folded on the table. Her nails were short, practical, unpolished. Working hands. My younger brother. I'm his legal guardian. Our parents died when I was 21. Car accident on the interstate. Black ice, wrong place, wrong time. Tyler was 13 then. He's 17 now. That's a lot of responsibility for someone so young. Someone had to do it. The alternative was foster care, and I couldn't let that happen. Tyler's a good kid, smart. He's going to college next year, full scholarship to state school. He's going to have opportunities I never had. The pride in her voice was unmistakable, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest. This young woman, barely past her mid-20s, had sacrificed her own future to protect her brother's, had worked 2 jobs, worn secondhand clothes, lived small so someone else could dream big. When was the last time he'd met someone like that? Marcus returned with water for Iris and menus for both of them. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes? Daniel looked at Iris. Hungry. She bit her lip. I should probably go. I've already taken up enough of your time. You haven't taken up anything, and I'm hungry. Are you hungry? I can't. She glanced at the menu, then back at him. This is really expensive. I invited you to sit down. Dinner's on me. No, I couldn't possibly. Iris. Daniel leaned forward slightly. I'm sitting here alone on what was supposed to be a date. You're sitting here alone on what was supposed to be a date. We're both already dressed up, already here, already committed to the evening. We can either sit and stare at each other awkwardly, or we can order some overpriced food and make the best of a bad situation. Your choice. She hesitated, clearly torn between pride and practicality. Please, Daniel added quietly. I'd really like the company. That seemed to decide it. Okay, thank you, but I'm ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. Order whatever you want. Marcus waited patiently while they reviewed the options. Daniel had eaten here enough times to have the menu memorized, but he pretended to study it, giving Iris time to process the astronomical prices. I'll have the chicken, she finally said, and a small salad to start. Excellent choice. And for you, Mr. Hayes? Daniel ordered the ribeye, medium rare, with roasted vegetables. As Marcus departed, Iris was looking at him with renewed curiosity. He knows your name. I've been here before. For business. Must be pretty successful business if you can afford to eat here regularly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. This was dangerous territory. I do okay. Okay, he says, in a restaurant where the salad costs more than I make in half a day. But there was no resentment in her voice, just observation tinged with humor. What about you? Daniel asked, steering away from finances. Beyond work and taking care of your brother, what do you do? For yourself? Iris laughed, a short, surprised sound. For myself? I don't think I've done something for myself in about 6 years. Nothing, no hobbies, no guilty pleasures. She considered this. I read, when I can, library books mostly. I like mysteries, the kind where everything seems impossible until the very end, and then it all makes sense. I like puzzles that way. What else? That's pretty much it. Between two jobs and Tyler, there's not much time for anything else. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because you had to, not because someone else needed it, but just for you. Iris opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. Opened it again. Finally, I honestly can't remember. The admission hung between them, heavy with implications. That's not sustainable, Daniel said softly. You'll burn out. Maybe, but until Tyler's settled, until he's safely through college and launched into his own life, I can keep going. I have to. And after that? After he's settled? I don't know. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. Their appetizers arrived. Iris's modest salad and Daniel's French onion soup. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the initial awkwardness giving way to something more comfortable. Can I ask you something? Iris said eventually. And you can tell me if I'm overstepping. Ask. Your wife. When she was sick, were you there? Or were you too busy with your important, boring investment work? The question should have offended him, should have felt invasive, inappropriate for a first meeting. But Iris's eyes held no judgment, only genuine curiosity, and somehow that made it safe to answer honestly. I was there, Daniel said quietly. Every moment I could be. I rearranged my entire life to be there. Worked from the hospital when I had to work at all. Held her hand through every chemo session, every doctor's appointment, every long night when the pain got too bad. And Emma? I tried to shield her from the worst of it, tried to keep her life as normal as possible, but kids aren't stupid. She knew her mother was dying, she knew, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. That must have been unbearable. It was. The helplessness was the worst part. I could write a check for any amount, experimental treatments, the best specialists, anything, but money couldn't save her. For the first time in my adult life, I encountered a problem I couldn't solve by throwing resources at it. Iris reached across the table, her hand hovering for a moment before gently touching his. The gesture was brief, barely a second, but it sent warmth through him. I'm sorry, she said. Truly. Thank you. It's getting easier. Time doesn't heal exactly, but it does soften things. Emma's starting to smile more, starting to talk about her mother in the present tense again, sharing memories instead of grief. And you? Daniel picked up his water glass, studying the way light refracted through the crystal. I don't know. I thought I was doing okay. Then my friends convinced me to try dating, and I ended up here, stood up by a woman I'd never met, realizing I have no idea how to do any of this anymore. Any of what? This. Connection. Meeting someone new, being anything other than Emma's father or my company's CEO. I've forgotten how to just be a person. You're being a person right now, Iris pointed out. You're talking to me. That's different. How? Because you don't know me. You don't have expectations. You're not looking at me and seeing dollar signs or strategic advantages or networking opportunities. You're just here. You say that like it's unusual. In my world, it's extraordinarily unusual. Their main courses arrived, and for a while they focused on eating. The food was exceptional, the kind of culinary artistry that justified the astronomical prices. But Daniel found himself paying more attention to Iris than to his plate. She ate slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite with an appreciation that suggested meals like this were rare. No phone on the table, no distracted scrolling, just full presence in the moment. Tell me about Emma, she said eventually. What's she like? Daniel's face softened instantly. She's incredible. Smart, funny, stubborn as hell. She's got her mother's eyes, and apparently my talent for asking questions that don't have easy answers. Like what? Last week she asked me if I was lonely. Just came right out with it over breakfast. What did you tell her? I lied and said no. She saw right through it. Called me out, actually, said I had the same face her friend's dad had before he started dating again. Iris smiled. Sounds like a perceptive kid. Too perceptive sometimes. She's already asked me twice about tonight's date. Wanted to know if I liked the woman, if I was nervous, if I thought we might fall in love like in the movies. What are you going to tell her? The truth, I suppose. that the date didn't happen, but I had an interesting evening anyway. Will you mention me? Daniel considered this. Would you mind if I did? I don't know. What would you say? That I met someone unexpected, someone real, someone who reminded me that not everyone in the world is playing angles. Iris looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, but I'm a pretty good judge of character. Comes with the territory in my line of work. The boring, important investment work? Exactly that. They finished their meal, declining dessert, but accepting coffee. The restaurant was starting to empty out. It was past 9 now, and the dinner rush was winding down. Soon they'd be among the last patrons, and the evening would have to end. Daniel found himself not wanting it to end. Can I ask you something now? He ventured. Fair's fair. Why did you agree to the blind date in the first place? If you're working 2 jobs and taking care of your brother, when would you even have time for a relationship? Iris wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking warmth. Honestly, I was lonely. I know that sounds pathetic, but it doesn't sound pathetic. I'm 26 years old. My entire adult life has been work and responsibility. I've never had a real relationship, never had time to date, to go to parties, to do any of the things people my age are supposed to do. And sometimes, late at night when Tyler's asleep and I'm doing the dishes or folding laundry, I wonder if this is it, if this is all my life is going to be. So you said yes to the date. So I said yes to the date, even though I knew it was probably a mistake. Even though I knew a guy who picks a restaurant like this probably isn't looking for someone like me. What do you mean, someone like you? Come on, Daniel. Look at me. Look at where I am in life. I'm a call center operator who waits tables at night. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in the kind of neighborhood where you don't walk alone after dark. I buy my clothes at thrift stores and count every penny because one unexpected expense could sink us. I'm not exactly prime dating material for someone who can afford to eat here. You're assuming that's what matters. Isn't it? In my experience, money always matters. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she was wrong, but the truth was more complicated. Money did matter. It always had. It shaped opportunities, opened doors, created safety nets that people like Iris simply didn't have. But it didn't create what he felt sitting across from her. This ease, this connection. I think you're selling yourself short, he said finally. Or maybe I'm being realistic. Realism and self-worth aren't the same thing. Iris met his eyes. You talk like someone who's never had to worry about money. I talk like someone who's learned that money solves some problems and creates others. It's not a cure-all, Iris. It's just a tool. A tool I don't have. No, Daniel admitted, but you have other things. Resilience, integrity. The kind of strength that comes from holding your family together when the world's falling apart. Those aren't small things. She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone slicker. Someone who'd have spent the whole meal talking about himself, checking his phone, looking over my shoulder for someone more interesting. That sounds awful. That's been my very limited experience with dating. Then you've been meeting the wrong people. Maybe. Or maybe I've just been meeting people who are honest about what they want. Before Daniel could respond, Iris's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her purse, glanced at the screen, and her entire body tensed. What is it? Daniel asked. My brother. She read the message again, her jaw tightening. He's locked out of our apartment. I have the only key and he's been waiting outside for 40 minutes. I didn't hear my phone earlier because it was on silent. She was already standing, gathering her worn coat, her purse, moving with the swift efficiency of someone used to crises. Iris, wait. I'm sorry. I have to go. Tyler's waiting, and it's cold out, and let me help. I can drive you or call you a car, or no. The word was firm but not unkind. Thank you, but no. I can handle it. She started to walk away, then paused, turning back. Thank you for dinner and for the conversation. It was really nice, really unexpected, but nice. Iris, but she was already moving, weaving between tables toward the exit with quick, determined steps. Daniel watched her go, watched her push through the heavy front door into the cold March night, watched her disappear from view. And he sat there, frozen, as the reality of the moment crashed over him. She hadn't asked for his number, hadn't suggested meeting again, hadn't seemed even slightly impressed by the expensive meal, the upscale restaurant, the carefully curated evening. She'd simply left, because someone needed her more than she needed whatever this was. Marcus appeared at his elbow. "Will there be anything else this evening, Mr. Hayes?" "No, just the check, please." "Of course, sir. I must say, if I may be so bold, the young lady seemed quite lovely." "She was," Daniel agreed quietly. "She is." The check arrived, predictably astronomical. Daniel barely glanced at it, just slid his black card across the leather folder and waited while Marcus processed the payment. The waiter returned with the receipt, which Daniel signed with a generous tip. As he stood to leave, he caught his reflection in one of the restaurant's ornate mirrors. He looked exactly the same as when he'd arrived 3 hours earlier. Same expensive suit, same carefully styled hair, same face that had stared out from business magazine covers. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, he'd had a conversation with someone who didn't want anything from him, who didn't know about Hayes Enterprises or his net worth or his position in the city's power structure, who looked at him and saw just a man, a father, a person trying to figure out how to move forward after loss. Outside, the March air bit at his exposed skin. His driver was parked half a block away, the black Mercedes idling at the curb. But Daniel didn't immediately head toward it. Instead, he stood on the sidewalk, looking in the direction Iris had gone. She was out there somewhere, riding a bus or maybe walking, hurrying home to a brother who needed her. Living a life Daniel couldn't even properly imagine, despite all his resources and experience. And she'd walked away from him without hesitation. Not because she was playing hard to get, not as some calculated move in a romantic game, but because family came first, because responsibility mattered, because some things were more important than possibility. Daniel pulled out his phone, intending to call his driver over, but instead found himself staring at the blank screen. He didn't have her number, didn't know her last name beyond Lane, didn't know where she lived or worked beyond vague descriptions. For a man who built his fortune on information, on knowing things before others knew them, on having access to every relevant detail, it was profoundly unsettling. And somehow, that made her even more fascinating. "Mr. Hayes?" His driver had noticed him standing there and pulled up to the curb. "Ready to head home, sir?" Daniel slid into the back seat, the leather cool against his back. "Yes, Robert. Home." As they pulled into traffic, Daniel found himself replaying the evening in his mind. The way Iris had approached him, hesitant but honest. The careful way she'd handled the menu, conscious of prices. The pride in her voice when she talked about her brother. The absence of any attempt to impress or manipulate. And that moment when her phone had buzzed. The instant transformation from dinner companion to protective guardian. No apology beyond what was necessary. No explanation beyond what was true. Just action. Immediate. Instinctive. Right. The city rolled past his window. Lights and steel and millions of people living their separate lives. Somewhere out there, Iris was unlocking her apartment door, greeting a relieved younger brother, probably starting a load of laundry or tackling some other necessary task. Not thinking about him. And that bothered Daniel more than he wanted to admit. The house was dark when he arrived. Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper, had left the usual lights on. Entryway, kitchen, upstairs hall, but the rest of the enormous structure sat in darkness. 6 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a home office, a library, a media room, a kitchen bigger than some people's entire apartments. Too much space, too much silence. Emma would be home tomorrow afternoon, full of stories about her sleepover, and the house would feel alive again for a brief window. But tonight, it was just Daniel, wandering through rooms that echoed with absence. He ended up in his study, a tumbler of scotch in hand, staring at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. This view alone had cost him nearly $10 million when he'd bought the penthouse 5 years ago. You could see the entire downtown corridor from here, watch the pulse of commerce and nightlife, feel connected to the vital heartbeat of urban existence. But Daniel had never felt more disconnected. His phone buzzed, a text from Richard Chen, his CFO and one of his oldest friends. How'd the date go? Did the beautiful Melissa live up to the hype? Daniel stared at the message for a long moment before typing his response. She didn't show. Met someone else instead. Long story. The reply came almost instantly. Someone else? At the restaurant? Do tell. Tomorrow. Too tired tonight. Come on, you can't leave me hanging like that. Daniel smiled despite himself. Her name was Iris. She was kind. That's all you need to know for now. Was? Past tense, like you're not seeing her again. I don't have her contact information. Daniel Hayes, master of corporate intelligence, couldn't get a phone number? That's pathetic even for you. Good night, Richard. This conversation isn't over. Daniel set his phone aside and returned his attention to the skyline. Somewhere out there, in one of those anonymous buildings, Iris Lane was living a life he couldn't begin to understand. Working 2 jobs to support her brother. Wearing mended coats and resoled shoes, counting pennies and making sacrifices that probably never even crossed his radar. And yet she'd had something he didn't, purpose. The clear, unambiguous kind that came from protecting someone you loved. From knowing exactly why you got up in the morning, why you pushed through exhaustion, why you kept going when everything said to quit. Daniel had purpose too. Emma, his company, the hundreds of employees who depended on Hayes Enterprises for their livelihoods. But it felt different, more diffuse, less certain. He finished his scotch and headed upstairs, past Emma's room with its explosion of stuffed animals and art supplies, past the master bedroom he'd once shared with Catherine, to the guest room he'd been sleeping in for the past 6 months because the master held too many memories. As he lay in the darkness, Daniel tried to sleep, but his mind kept circling back to one moment. The instant Iris had stood to leave. No hesitation, no doubt, just immediate action in service of someone who needed her. When was the last time Daniel had felt that kind of certainty about anything? When was the last time he'd known, without question, that he was doing exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment? He couldn't remember. And that, more than anything else about this strange, unexpected evening, kept him awake until nearly dawn. The morning came too early, sunlight piercing through gaps in the curtains with aggressive cheerfulness. Daniel woke with the taste of scotch still lingering on his tongue and the memory of Iris Lane occupying far too much space in his mind. He showered, dressed in casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, the kind of outfit he almost never wore, and made his way downstairs. Mrs. Chen had already arrived, the scent of fresh coffee filling the kitchen. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes," she said, looking up from where she was organizing the day's meal prep. "You're up early for a Saturday." "Couldn't sleep," he admitted, pouring himself coffee from the French press. "The date didn't go well." Daniel paused mid-pour. Mrs. Chen had been with him since before Catherine's diagnosis, had helped him through the worst days, had become less employee and more family over the years. She'd earned the right to ask. The date didn't happen, but the evening was interesting. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. Interesting how? "I met someone else, someone unexpected. And nothing. She left. I don't know how to find her again." Mrs. Chen studied him with the kind of knowing look that only someone who'd watched you fall apart and rebuild could manage. "You want to find her." It wasn't a question. "I don't know what I want," Daniel said honestly, "but I can't stop thinking about her." "Then perhaps you should figure out what that means before you do anything else." Sound advice, as always. But Daniel had never been particularly good at sitting still and figuring things out. He was a man of action, of solutions, of making things happen through sheer force of will and resources. His phone buzzed. Emma, texting from her sleepover. "Dad, can you pick me up early? Sophie's mom is being weird and I want to come home." Daniel smiled despite himself. Define weird. "She keeps asking if I'm okay and if I need to talk about my feelings. It's creepy." "That's called caring, sweetheart. It's annoying. Can you come get me? Please? Give me 30 minutes. You're the best dad ever." Daniel grabbed his keys and headed for the garage, grateful for the distraction. The drive to Sophie's house took him through parts of the city he rarely saw. Middle-class neighborhoods with modest homes and minivans and driveways, kids playing basketball in cul-de-sacs, normal life unfolding in normal ways. Emma was waiting on the front porch when he pulled up, her overnight bag clutched in her hands, her expression a mix of relief and residual irritation. "That was the worst," she announced, climbing into the passenger seat. Sophie's mom kept asking me about Mom and if I was processing my grief and if I needed to explore my feelings in a safe space. It was like being in therapy, except I didn't ask for it. She was trying to be kind. She was trying to fix something that isn't broken. I'm fine, Dad. I miss Mom, but I'm fine. Daniel glanced at his daughter as he pulled away from the curb. She looked so much like Catherine. The same dark hair, the same determined chin, the same way of holding herself when she was upset but trying not to show it. "You're allowed to not be fine sometimes," he said gently. "I know that. But I'm also allowed to be fine when I actually am fine. People act like I should be sad all the time just because Mom died. Like being happy means I'm forgetting her or something. No one thinks that. Sophie's mom does. She got all weird when I was laughing at a movie last night. Like she couldn't understand how I could possibly laugh when I don't have a mother." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That's not fair to you." "I know. That's why I texted you." They drove in silence for a few minutes, the city rolling past the windows. Then Emma said, "So how was your date?" "It didn't happen. She canceled." Emma turned to look at him fully. "She stood you up?" "Apparently she found someone better." "That's so rude. What kind of person does that?" "The kind who wasn't right for me anyway." Emma seemed to consider this. "Are you sad about it?" "No. Honestly, I'm relieved." "Then why did you agree to the date in the first place?" It was a fair question, one Daniel had been asking himself since last night. "Because Uncle Richard and your Aunt Michelle thought it was time. Because everyone keeps telling me I need to move on with my life." "Do you think you need to move on?" Daniel looked at his daughter, this wise little person who asked questions that didn't have easy answers. "I think I need to figure out what moving on actually means. It doesn't mean forgetting your mother. It doesn't mean replacing what we had. But it might mean being open to new things, new people." "Did you meet someone new?" The question caught him off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you have that look. The one you get when you're thinking about something important." "What look?" "The faraway look. Like you're here but also somewhere else." Daniel smiled. "You're too perceptive for your own good." "So you did meet someone." "I met someone. But I don't know if I'll see her again." "Why not?" "Because I don't know how to find her." Emma frowned. "Did you ask for her number?" The moment didn't seem right. "Dad, come on. Everyone knows you're supposed to ask for the number." "It's more complicated than that." "Why?" How could he explain it? How the evening had unfolded, how Iris had appeared and disappeared like something from a dream, how the connection had felt both profound and fragile, how asking for her number in that moment would have felt like grasping at something that needed to remain free? "Sometimes," Daniel said carefully, "the right thing isn't the strategic thing. Sometimes you have to let moments unfold on their own." That sounds like something Mom would have said. Your mother was very wise. She also would have told you to stop overthinking and just find the woman. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him by his daughter's bluntness. "Maybe you're right. I'm always right. I'm 9. They arrived home and Emma disappeared upstairs to her room, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts again. He tried to distract himself with work. There were always reports to review, deals to analyze, decisions to make, but his concentration was shot. By Sunday evening, he'd given up pretending he could focus on anything else. Monday morning brought him to the office earlier than usual, hoping that familiar routine would restore some sense of normalcy. His assistant, Jennifer, looked surprised to see him before 7. "You're here early," she observed, handing him his usual coffee. Black, no sugar. Couldn't sleep. The date was that bad? News traveled fast in his inner circle. The date didn't happen. Can we talk about something else? Of course. You have a board meeting at 9, lunch with the Crestview investors at noon, and the community center site visit at 3. Daniel paused. What community center? Jennifer consulted her tablet. The Hayes Foundation grant recipient, the Riverside Community Center. You approved the funding last month, $2 million for renovations and programming. They've requested a site visit to show you how the initial funds are being used. Right, yes, that's fine. He'd approved dozens of grants through his foundation. Catherine had started it, back when she was healthy, insisting that wealth carried responsibility. After her death, Daniel had continued the work partly out of obligation, partly out of genuine belief, and partly because it was one of the last connections he had to his wife's vision. But he rarely did site visits, usually sent Richard or another board member in his place. "Do I have to go?" he asked. Jennifer gave him a look. "You specifically requested to be more involved with foundation work. Your words, not mine." "When did I say that?" 3 weeks ago? You said you wanted to see the impact firsthand and connect with the communities we serve." Daniel vaguely remembered that conversation. It had been late at night, after too much wine, in one of his periodic attempts to find meaning in the machinery of his life. "Fine, I'll go." The morning passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, the familiar rhythm of business dulling the strange restlessness that had plagued him all weekend. But by 3 o'clock, driving toward the Riverside neighborhood, that restlessness returned with force. Riverside wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't safe either. The kind of neighborhood where people looked over their shoulders, where buildings wore their age badly, where hope and despair lived side by side in uncomfortable proximity. The community center occupied a converted warehouse on the edge of an industrial zone. The exterior had been recently painted, bright murals depicting children playing, families gathering, dreams taking flight, but the building's bones were old and tired. Daniel parked his Mercedes on the street, very aware of how out of place the vehicle looked. A small crowd had gathered near the entrance, the center's director, board members, local politicians eager for photo opportunities with a billionaire philanthropist. He plastered on his public face and emerged from the car. "Mr. Hayes, welcome, welcome." The director, an energetic woman in her 50s named Carol Washington, pumped his hand enthusiastically. "We're so honored you could visit. The work you're doing here is changing lives." "The foundation is happy to help," Daniel said automatically, slipping into the smooth platitudes that came with this territory. The tour began. New basketball courts, updated kitchen facilities, a computer lab with donated equipment, a library corner with fresh books. Everywhere signs of money well spent, of genuine improvement, of hope being rebuilt one board and nail at a time. But Daniel had been on enough of these tours to recognize the performance aspect, the way certain kids were positioned to interact with him, the way success stories were presented with careful packaging, the way poverty was made palatable for wealthy donors. They were in the main recreation room when he saw her. At first he thought his mind was playing tricks, that the weekend's obsessive thinking had conjured her from nothing. But no, there she was, across the room, crouched beside a little girl who was crying, speaking in low, gentle tones. "Iris?" She was wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt with the center's logo, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup, completely focused on the child in front of her. She hadn't seen him yet. Daniel's heart kicked into a higher gear. Carol was still talking, explaining something about after-school programming, but her words faded to white noise. Daniel watched as Iris produced a tissue from her pocket, helped the little girl blow her nose, then made a funny face that transformed tears into giggles. "I'm sorry," Daniel interrupted. "Who is that? Over there? With the child?" Carol followed his gaze. "Oh, that's Iris. She volunteers here most afternoons. Wonderful with the kids. Why do you ask?" "Just curious. She seems very dedicated." "She is. Works 2 jobs but still finds time to help out. We're lucky to have her." Daniel's mind raced. This was it. The chance he'd been hoping for without quite admitting it. But approach her how? In front of all these people? Pull her aside for a private conversation that would immediately become the subject of speculation? Before he could decide, Iris looked up and saw him. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by confusion, then something that might have been understanding. She said something to the little girl, stood slowly, and walked toward the group with measured steps. "Mr. Hayes," Carol said warmly, "this is one of our best volunteers. Iris Lane, meet Daniel Hayes." "We've met," Iris said quietly. Her eyes held questions but also caution. "It's good to see you again, Mr. Hayes." The formality in her tone was deliberate, a boundary being drawn. "Ms. Lane," Daniel replied, matching her tone. "Small world." "Indeed." Carol looked between them, sensing something she couldn't quite name. "Well, how nice. Iris, would you mind giving Mr. Hayes a tour of the children's reading program? That's your area, after all." "Of course," Iris said, though her expression suggested she minded very much. They walked away from the group, down a hallway decorated with children's artwork, toward a smaller room filled with books and beanbags and the kind of cheerful chaos that came with youth. Once they were alone, Iris turned to face him. "You're Daniel Hayes," she said. Not a question, an accusation. "Yes." "The billionaire Daniel Hayes, Hayes Enterprises, Forbes list. That Daniel Hayes?" "Yes." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I sat across from you for 2 hours and ate your expensive meal and told you about my life. And you never thought to mention that you're one of the richest men in the city? You didn't ask. I told you I worked 2 jobs. I told you about my brother, about struggling to make ends meet, about wearing secondhand clothes. And the whole time you were sitting there knowing you could write a check for more than I'll make in my entire life." "Would it have changed anything if you'd known?" "Of course it would have changed things. I would have—" She stopped, pressed her hands to her face. "I can't believe this. I sat there feeling sorry for you, feeling like we had something in common, like you understood what it meant to struggle. I do struggle, just in different ways. Don't you dare try to compare your struggles to mine. You have no idea what real struggle looks like." "My wife died, Iris. I held her hand while cancer destroyed her piece by piece. I watched my daughter's heart break and couldn't fix it. I know what struggle looks like, even if it doesn't come with a paycheck crisis." Iris's expression softened fractionally, but the anger didn't fully leave her eyes. "Why are you even here? I didn't know you'd be here. This is a foundation site visit. It was scheduled weeks ago." "Your foundation, of course." She shook her head. "The Hayes Foundation. I've seen the plaques. $2 million for renovations. A rounding error in your bank account, but here it buys new floors and fresh paint and hope for kids who've never had much of either." "Is that a bad thing?" "No, but it's easy, isn't it? Writing checks, fixing problems from a distance, never having to actually get your hands dirty or understand what it's like to live here, to struggle here, to try to build something when the whole world's stacked against you. That's not fair." "Isn't it? When's the last time you rode a public bus, Daniel? When's the last time you chose between paying rent and buying groceries? When's the last time you wore the same coat for 5 years because you couldn't afford a new one? When's the last time you lost someone you loved?" Daniel shot back. "When's the last time you had to explain to a 9-year-old why her mother isn't coming home? When's the last time you laid awake at night wondering if you're failing everyone who depends on you?" They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the air between them crackling with emotion. "This was a mistake," Iris said finally. "Saturday night was a mistake. This conversation is a mistake. You should go back to your tour and your foundation and your world, and I should get back to mine." "Iris, please, just please go." But Daniel couldn't move, couldn't walk away. Something in him had awakened Saturday night, and being near her again only intensified it. "I thought about you," he admitted quietly, "all weekend. I couldn't stop thinking about you. Don't. I didn't plan this. Didn't orchestrate some elaborate reunion. I'm as surprised to see you as you are to see me. That doesn't make it better." "What would make it better? What do you want me to say?" "I want you to understand why this can't happen. Why whatever you think you felt Saturday night can't go anywhere." "Tell me." Iris took a breath. "Because we're from different worlds. Because you have billions and I have nothing. Because even if you think money doesn't matter, it does. It always does. It shapes everything. How we see the world, what we want from it, what we believe is possible. Or maybe," Daniel countered, "it's just paper, just numbers on a screen. Maybe what actually matters is how we treat people, what we do with our time, whether we show up when someone needs us. You can afford to think that way. I can't. For me, money is the difference between Tyler going to college or not, between making rent or ending up on the street, between security and terror. So let me help." "No." The word came out sharp. "I don't want your help. I don't want your charity. I don't want to be your project or your good deed or whatever this is. This isn't charity. This is—" Daniel struggled to find the right words. "This is me trying to understand something I felt, something real, something I haven't felt in years. You felt it for 2 hours over dinner. That's not real. That's just loneliness and proximity." "You're wrong. Am I? Then tell me, what do you actually know about me? What do you know beyond the surface details I shared over expensive wine? Daniel wanted to argue, but she had a point. He knew facts about her life. Details. But did he know her? The real her beneath the brave face and the careful dignity? I know you put your brother first, he said slowly. I know you work yourself to exhaustion for someone else's future. I know you walked away from that dinner without hesitation when family called. I know you volunteer here even though you're already stretched impossibly thin. I know you're proud and stubborn and afraid of accepting help even when you desperately need it. That's observation, not knowledge. Then let me know you better. Mr. Hayes? Carol's voice echoed down the hallway. We're ready to continue the tour if you are. The moment shattered. Iris stepped back, putting physical distance between them, her expression closing like a door. You should go, she said. They're waiting for you. This isn't over. Yes, it is. But her eyes said something different, said that maybe, possibly, she felt it too. This pull, this impossible connection that made no logical sense but felt undeniable nonetheless. Daniel returned to the tour group, answered questions, smiled for photos, made appropriate comments about the center's good work. But his attention was split, his awareness tracking Iris as she moved through the building, helping children, organizing supplies, existing in her world while he performed in his. An hour later, as the tour concluded, Carol pulled him aside. I hope you don't mind me saying this, she began carefully, but Iris is special. The work she does here, the care she shows these kids, it comes from a real place. She's not volunteering to pad a resume or fulfill community service hours. She's here because she understands these children, because she was one of them. I don't mind you saying it. I saw the way you looked at her, and I saw the way she looked at you when she thought no one was watching. Carol paused. Whatever's happening there, be careful. Iris has been through a lot. She doesn't need complications. I don't want to complicate her life. Then what do you want? Daniel didn't have an answer. He left the center as the afternoon faded toward evening, driving through streets that felt different now that he knew Iris lived somewhere nearby. She was out here, in one of these anonymous buildings, living a life he'd glimpsed but couldn't fully comprehend. That night, Emma found him in his study, staring at his laptop without really seeing the screen. You okay, Dad? Just thinking. About the woman you met? How did you... I told you. You have a face. A thinking about something, important face. Emma climbed into the chair across from his desk. Did you find her? Yes. And? And it's complicated. Why? Because she doesn't want to be found. Because she thinks we're too different. Because she's probably right. Emma considered this. Mom always said that when something's worth having, it's worth fighting for. Your mother said a lot of wise things. So are you going to fight for it? I don't know if I should. What if fighting for it just makes things worse for her? Or what if not fighting for it means you both miss out on something important? Daniel looked at his daughter, this old soul in a child's body, this piece of Catherine living on in questions and observations and impossible wisdom. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just notice it more when I say things you want to hear. He laughed despite himself. Fair enough. So what are you going to do? I honestly don't know. But even as he said it, Daniel knew that was a lie. He did know. He'd known since the moment he saw Iris across that recreation room, knew with a certainty that bypassed logic and caution and all the reasonable reasons to walk away. He was going to find a way to see her again. The question was how to do it without making everything worse. Tuesday morning brought an email from Carol Washington, thanking him for the site visit and including a detailed report on how foundation funds were being utilized. Buried in the third paragraph was a seemingly casual mention. Our volunteer coordinator would love to discuss ways we might expand our after-school programming. Perhaps you'd be interested in attending one of our sessions to see the work firsthand? Daniel read between the lines. Carol was throwing him a lifeline, giving him a legitimate reason to return. He replied immediately, confirming his interest and suggesting Thursday afternoon. Wednesday crawled by with agonizing slowness. Daniel tried to focus on work, on Emma, on anything that would distract him from the clock, But his mind kept returning to Iris, to the anger in her eyes, to the way she'd looked at him before Carol interrupted, like she wanted to believe him but was afraid of what that belief might cost. Thursday afternoon found him back at the Riverside Community Center, this time without the entourage, without the formal tour, just a man arriving to observe after-school programming. The coordinator, a cheerful young man named Marcus, walked him through the daily routine, homework help, creative activities, snacks and supervision for kids whose parents worked late. Simple, essential work that filled a gap in overstretched lives. And there in the corner of the main room, helping a group of children with math problems, was Iris. She looked up as he entered and something flashed across her face. Resignation, maybe, or acceptance that he wasn't going to simply disappear. Daniel spent the next hour observing, asking questions, learning about the program's challenges and successes. But his real attention never strayed far from Iris, watching how she moved through the space, how children gravitated toward her, how she gave each one exactly what they needed. Patience here, firmness there, encouragement everywhere. As the session wound down and parents began arriving for pickup, Marcus pulled him aside. Iris mentioned you two had met before. We did. She also mentioned your Daniel Hayes, the Daniel Hayes. That's becoming a theme. Marcus grinned. Look, I'm not trying to get in your business, but Iris is good people. Best volunteer we've got. And she's been through enough without someone like me making things complicated. I was going to say without someone breaking her heart, but yeah, complicated works too. I'm not trying to break anyone's heart. Maybe not. But intention and impact aren't always the same thing. It was the second warning he'd received, and Daniel couldn't fault the sentiment. These people cared about Iris, protected her, recognized her value in ways that had nothing to do with economics or status. The last child was picked up. The last volunteer departed. Slowly, the center emptied until it was just Daniel, Marcus finishing some paperwork in the office, and Iris gathering her things by the door. Daniel walked over. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I don't think that's a good idea. 5 minutes, please. Iris sighed, setting down her bag. 5 minutes. They stepped outside into the cooling evening. The street was quiet, the industrial buildings mostly dark, the city settling into that liminal space between work and night. I'm sorry, Daniel began, for not telling you who I was on Saturday, for letting you think I was just some regular guy dealing with regular problems. You are some regular guy dealing with regular problems. You're just also a billionaire. Does that really change everything? Yes, Iris said simply. It changes everything, because now I can't know if anything you say or do is real or if it's just, I don't know, rich person novelty. Poor girl meets wealthy man, tale as old as time. This isn't a fairy tale. No, it's not. Fairy tales have happy endings. They also have people willing to fight for those endings. Iris looked at him steadily. What do you want from me, Daniel? I want to know you. Really know you. Not the surface version you show to strangers, but the real person underneath. Why? Because Saturday night, for 2 hours, I felt like myself. Not the CEO, not the widower, not Emma's father, just Daniel. Just a man having a conversation with a woman who didn't want anything from him except honesty. Do you have any idea how rare that is? So this is about you, about what I make you feel. No, maybe at first, but not now. Now it's about wanting to understand someone who impresses the hell out of me. Someone who carries impossible weight with grace. Someone who gives and never seems to ask for anything in return. You don't know me well enough to be impressed. Then let me get to know you better. To what end? What's the goal here? We date for a while, you get bored, I get hurt, and we both move on with our incompatible lives. Or maybe we find something neither of us expected. Maybe we discover that the differences don't matter as much as the similarities. Iris shook her head. You're idealizing this, romanticizing it. In reality, I'm a 26-year-old woman with no prospects, no education beyond high school, and a teenager to support. You're a billionaire with a daughter and a company and responsibilities I can't even imagine. We're playing different games on different fields. What if I don't want to play games at all? Then you're already at a disadvantage because life is a game, especially for people like me. They stood in silence, the gap between them feeling wider than the few feet of concrete. Your 5 minutes are up, Iris said finally. One more thing, please. She waited. If I asked you to dinner, not at Chateau Bleu, not somewhere expensive, just a normal place, would you say yes? Why would I do that? Because you felt it too. Saturday night, that connection. I know you did. Iris's expression flickered, vulnerability breaking through the defensive walls for just a moment. Even if I did, it doesn't mean I should act on it. Why not? Because I've worked too hard to build what little stability I have. Because I can't afford emotional complications. Because Tyler needs me focused, and I can't give him what he needs if I'm distracted by something that can't possibly work. You're afraid. Of course I'm afraid. Aren't you? Terrified, Daniel admitted, but I'm more afraid of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. Iris picked up her bag, slinging it over her shoulder. I have to go. Tyler's expecting me. Just think about it. The dinner, nothing fancy, just two people talking. I'll think about it. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Daniel watched her walk to the bus stop, watched her board the number 17, watched the bus pull away into traffic and disappear around a corner. His phone buzzed. Richard. Drinks tonight? You've been weird all week. Can't. Emma has a school thing. Tomorrow then. And you're going to tell me what's going on. Maybe. Definitely. Daniel drove home through streets painted gold by setting sun, his mind already turning over possibilities, strategies, ways to breach the walls Iris had built around herself. He wasn't used to people saying no to him. In business, his word carried weight, his presence commanded rooms, his decisions moved markets. But Iris didn't care about any of that. Couldn't be bought or impressed or maneuvered into position, which made her the most fascinating challenge he'd encountered in years. And maybe, just maybe, exactly what he needed. Emma's school thing turned out to be a spring concert, and Daniel sat in the auditorium surrounded by other parents, watching his daughter play violin in an ensemble that was enthusiastic if not entirely on key. She'd been practicing for weeks, her dedication fierce and absolute, and when the final note faded and applause filled the room, the pride on her face made everything else fall away. Afterward, in the parking lot, she chattered about missed notes and tempo problems while Daniel assured her it was perfect. But as they drove home, she went quiet, studying him with that unnerving perception she'd inherited from her mother. You're still thinking about her, Emma said. Not a question. I saw her again, at the community center. Did you talk? We did. And? And she's still not sure this is a good idea. Emma drummed her fingers on the armrest, a habit she picked up when processing information. Why not? Because she thinks we're too different, because she's worried about getting hurt. Are you going to hurt her? The directness of the question hit Daniel like a physical blow. I don't want to. That's not the same as saying you won't. No, he admitted. It's not. They pulled into the garage and Emma unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't immediately get out. Mom used to say that being brave wasn't about not being scared. It was about being scared and doing the thing anyway. Your mother was talking about you learning to ride a bike. Maybe. But it works for other stuff too. Emma opened her door. Sometimes people need to see that you're willing to be scared with them, that you're not just going to run away when things get hard. She disappeared into the house, leaving Daniel sitting in the darkened garage, wondering when his 9-year-old had become wiser than him. Friday morning brought a development he didn't expect. Jennifer appeared in his office doorway, holding a folder, her expression carefully neutral in a way that meant trouble. What is it? Daniel asked. Background check came back on the community center volunteers. He looked up sharply. I didn't request a background check. No, but security runs them automatically on anyone you have extended contact with. It's protocol. She set the folder on his desk. There's nothing alarming, but I thought you should see it. Daniel stared at the folder like it might bite him. Inside would be everything: employment records, credit reports, legal history, social media activity, the full excavation of a private life laid bare for corporate security purposes. I don't want to see it. Jennifer blinked. Sir? Take it away. Shred it. Whatever you do with these things, I don't want to know. Mr. Hayes, if there's any risk, there's no risk. And even if there were, I don't want to violate someone's privacy just because I have the resources to do so. Jennifer picked up the folder slowly. This is about Iris Lane, isn't it? The volunteer you've been asking about. How did you? I've worked for you for 6 years. I know when something's different. She tucked the folder under her arm. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right call. Some things you should learn directly, not from a file. After she left, Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at the city skyline. The old Daniel, the one from before Catherine's diagnosis, the ruthless CEO who treated information as currency, would have read that file, would have justified it as due diligence, as protecting himself and Emma, as simply being smart. But something had shifted. The idea of knowing Iris's private struggles, her financial details, her vulnerabilities without her consent felt fundamentally wrong. If she was going to share those things, it needed to be her choice. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Iris. Carol gave me your number. About that dinner, Saturday night 6 p.m., but somewhere normal. And you're not paying for everything. Daniel stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure he wasn't imagining it. He typed back, anywhere you want. I'll pick you up. No, I'll meet you there. Send me the address. Any preferences? Somewhere I won't feel like I need a second mortgage to order dessert. Daniel smiled despite himself. I know a place. He spent the next hour researching restaurants in her neighborhood, places that wouldn't intimidate or overwhelm, places where the food was good but the atmosphere was casual. Finally settled on Marco's, a family-run Italian place that had been serving the community for 30 years. Marco's on 5th Street. You know it? I know it. 6 o'clock. See you then. The phone went quiet, and Daniel sat holding it, feeling like a teenager who'd just secured his first date. The comparison would have embarrassed him if anyone could see, but alone in his office, he let himself feel it. Anticipation mixed with nervousness, mixed with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Richard called an hour later. Drinks. Tonight. You're not getting out of it this time. Fine, but just drinks. I need to be home by 9. Deal. The usual place? The usual place. They met at a whiskey bar in the financial district, the kind of establishment where deals were negotiated over rare bourbon, and the staff knew better than to interrupt serious conversations. Richard was already there when Daniel arrived, 2 glasses and a bottle waiting. You look different, Richard observed as Daniel sat down. Different how? I don't know. Less dead behind the eyes. That's a cheerful assessment. I call them like I see them. For the past 3 years, you've been going through the motions. Functional, but flat. Now you look like someone who's actually engaged with being alive. Richard poured them both drinks. It's the woman, isn't it? The one you met at the restaurant. Her name is Iris. And? And I'm seeing her tomorrow night. Actual date, not accidental meeting. That's fantastic. Why do you look terrified? Daniel took a sip of whiskey, letting the burn settle before answering. Because she's completely different from anyone I've ever dated. Because she has every reason to say no to this and she said yes anyway. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. Welcome to dating. Nobody knows what they're doing. You make it look easy. That's because Michelle does most of the work. Richard leaned back in his chair. Tell me about her, this Iris. So Daniel did. Told him about the blind date that wasn't. The conversation that felt more real than anything he'd experienced in years. The way she'd walked away without hesitation when her brother needed her. Told him about finding her at the community center, about the anger in her eyes when she realized who he was, about the walls she'd built and his determination to prove they didn't matter. Richard listened without interrupting, which was unusual enough that Daniel knew his friend was taking this seriously. She's scared, Richard said finally. I know. And you're not exactly low risk. Billionaire widower with a 9-year-old daughter. That's a lot of potential complications. I know that too. But you're doing it anyway. I'm doing it anyway. Richard raised his glass. Then here's to terrible ideas that might turn out to be the best decision you ever made. They drank. And the conversation shifted to safer topics. Business, Emma's concert, Richard's own family dramas. But underneath it all, Daniel felt the steady thrum of anticipation building towards Saturday night. He went home, checked on Emma, who was already asleep, and found himself standing in his closet trying to decide what to wear to a casual dinner. Everything he owned looked too expensive, too deliberate, too much like a man trying to impress rather than a man trying to connect. Eventually he settled on dark jeans and a simple sweater, then second-guessed himself 3 times before giving up and going to bed. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like a sign: warm sun, clear skies, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of flowers from the park. Emma had another sleepover planned, this time at a friend's house whose mother didn't psychoanalyze grief, and she left with a knowing smile that made Daniel both grateful and embarrassed. "Have fun on your date," she said, loud enough for Mrs. Chen to hear. "It's just dinner." "Sure it is." She hugged him. "Be yourself. The good parts, not the nervous parts." "When did you become a dating coach?" "I watch a lot of TV while you're at work." She left, and Daniel spent the afternoon trying to focus on anything other than the approaching evening. Failed spectacularly. By 5:30 he was pacing his study, checking his watch every 2 minutes, feeling utterly ridiculous and completely unable to stop. He arrived at Marco's at 5:50, parked down the street to avoid being obvious, and walked to the restaurant trying to project a calm he didn't feel. The place was exactly as he remembered from his research: checkered tablecloths, wine bottles lining the walls, the warm smell of garlic and tomatoes, families and couples filling mismatched chairs. Iris was already there, sitting at a corner table, wearing jeans and a simple green sweater that brought out the color of her eyes. No makeup that he could see, hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked up as he approached, and something vulnerable flickered across her face before she got it under control. "Hi," she said. "Hi?" Daniel sat down, suddenly aware of how much was riding on this moment. "You look beautiful." "You don't have to say that." "I know. I'm saying it because it's true." A small smile tugged at her lips. "You clean up pretty well yourself, for a billionaire." "I'm trying to go incognito. Is it working?" "The watch probably costs more than my car, so no." Daniel glanced at his wrist, a Patek Philippe that had been a gift from Catherine. "Fair point. I'll leave it at home next time." Next time, presumptuous. Hopeful. A waiter appeared. Marco himself, actually. A broad man in his 60s with an accent that had survived 40 years in America. "Iris, good to see you, Bella. And you brought a friend." "Hi, Marco. This is Daniel." "Daniel! Welcome, welcome. First time at Marco's?" "First time," Daniel confirmed. "Then you're in for a treat. Best Italian in the city, and I'm not just saying that because it's my kitchen." He winked. "What can I start you with? Wine? Appetizers?" They ordered red wine for the table, calamari to share, entrees that Marco recommended with the confidence of someone who knew his craft. As he departed, Iris took a sip of water and met Daniel's eyes. "I almost didn't come," she admitted. "What changed your mind?" "Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe curiosity, maybe stupidity, maybe I'm just tired of always playing it safe and getting nowhere." "This doesn't feel safe to you?" "Safe? You're a billionaire, Daniel. You exist in a completely different stratosphere. Nothing about this feels safe." "I'm just a person, same as you." "No, you're not. You're a person with unlimited resources, connections, power. I'm a person who counts pennies and rides buses. We're not the same. Different circumstances don't make us different species." Iris laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I do. And I think if you gave this a chance, you might believe it too." The wine arrived, giving them both a moment to reset. Marco poured with ceremony, declaring it a vintage from his cousin's vineyard in Tuscany, the best grapes in all of Italy, worth every penny. After he left, Iris took a sip and sighed. "This is really good." "It is. How much does a bottle like this cost?" "Does it matter?" "To me it does, because I need to know if we're drinking my rent payment." Daniel paused. "We're not. Marco's has reasonable prices. I checked." "You checked." "I wanted to pick somewhere you'd be comfortable." Something in her expression softened. "That was thoughtful." "I'm capable of thoughtfulness." "I'm learning that." She set down her glass. "Okay, since we're doing this, we should probably establish some ground rules." "Ground rules?" "Yes. First rule? Honesty. Complete honesty. No more hiding who you are or editing the truth to make yourself seem more relatable." "Agreed. What else?" "Second rule. No throwing money at problems. I know that's probably your instinct, but I need to know that you're interested in me, not in fixing me." You don't need fixing. Everyone needs something, but I need to do it on my own terms. Fair enough. Anything else? Iris considered. Third rule, my brother comes first, always. If Tyler needs me, I'm gone. No explanations necessary. I wouldn't expect anything less. And fourth, she hesitated. Fourth, we take this slow. I'm not interested in some whirlwind romance that burns bright and crashes hard. If we're doing this, we do it right. Daniel raised his glass. To taking it slow. They toasted, and the atmosphere shifted. Still careful, still uncertain, but with an undercurrent of possibility that hadn't been there before. The calamari arrived, perfectly fried and tender, and they ate while talking about safer topics. Iris asked about Emma, and Daniel found himself sharing stories. The violin concert, her two wise observations, the way she was processing grief by trying to fix everyone else's problems. She sounds wonderful, Iris said. She is, challenging, but wonderful. Does she know about me? She knows I met someone. She doesn't know details. What will you tell her? If we keep seeing each other? The truth, that you're someone who makes me think, who challenges me to be better, who doesn't let me hide behind money or status. Iris looked down at her plate. That's a lot of pressure. I don't mean it as pressure, just observation. Still, it's a lot. Their entrees came. Chicken marsala for her, seafood linguine for him. They shared bites, compared flavors, fell into an easy rhythm that felt both new and strangely familiar. Can I ask you something? Daniel ventured. About your parents. Iris tensed slightly. What about them? How do you carry it? The weight of losing them so young, of taking on Tyler's care, of sacrificing your own future for his. She was quiet for a long moment, twirling pasta on her fork. I don't think about it as sacrifice. I think about it as responsibility, as doing what needed to be done because there wasn't anyone else to do it. But it cost you. College, career possibilities, the chance to build your own life. Maybe. Or maybe it gave me something else. Purpose. The knowledge that I can survive hard things. The satisfaction of watching Tyler thrive because I didn't give up. She met his eyes. Not everyone gets to know they're essential to someone else's survival. That's not a small thing. No, Daniel agreed softly. It's not. What about you? How do you carry the weight of losing Catherine? The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Daniel set down his fork. I don't know if I carry it well, he admitted. Some days I feel like I'm managing. Other days I feel like I'm drowning and just doing a good job of hiding it. What helps? Emma. Work. Keeping busy enough that I don't have time to fall apart. He paused. And now, maybe this. Whatever this is. This is dinner. That's all it has to be right now. Right now is good enough. They finished eating, declined dessert, but accepted coffee, and the conversation deepened as the restaurant gradually emptied around them. Iris talked about Tyler, his dreams of becoming an engineer, his struggles with advanced math, the way he was starting to pull away as 17-year-olds do, testing independence while still needing guidance. Daniel talked about Emma's fears that he'd forget Catherine if he started dating, about the impossible balance between honoring the past and moving toward a future, about the loneliness of single parenthood, even when you were never actually alone. I didn't expect you to be so... Iris trailed off, searching for words. So what? So human, so uncertain. Billionaires aren't supposed to have doubts. We just hide them better, usually. You're not hiding much right now. No, Daniel agreed. I'm not. Marco appeared with the check, and immediately the atmosphere shifted. Iris reached for her purse, pulling out her wallet with determined movements. I said I was paying half, she reminded him. And I said anywhere you want, my treat. That wasn't the agreement. We each pay our own way. Daniel could see this wasn't about money. It was about pride, about equality, about not being bought or indebted. So he nodded. Okay, we split it. They divided the bill precisely down the middle, Iris counting out cash with careful attention, while Daniel paid his half on card. It should have felt awkward, transactional, but instead it felt like respect, like partnership. Outside, the spring evening had cooled into perfect comfort. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to leave, the moment stretching between them. "Thank you for coming," Daniel said, "for giving this a chance. Thank you for understanding why it's hard." "Can I see you again?" Iris smiled. "I think so, yes." "When?" "Slow, remember? We agreed to take it slow." "Slow doesn't mean never." "No, it doesn't." She pulled out her phone. "What's your number?" They exchanged information, fingers brushing as they compared screens to make sure it was correct. The touch was brief, electric, gone, before either could acknowledge it. "I should go," Iris said. "Tyler's expecting me." "Do you need a ride? I'm parked just down." "I'm taking the bus. It's fine." "Iris, rule 2, remember? No throwing money at problems. The bus is how I get around. It's who I am." But Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to insist that accepting a ride wasn't charity, but he recognized the boundary being drawn. "Okay, text me when you get home safe." "I'm not a damsel in distress." "I know. Text me anyway?" She considered, then nodded. "Okay, I'll text you." The bus arrived with hydraulic hiss and diesel rumble. Iris climbed aboard, found a seat by the window, and raised her hand in a small wave as the bus pulled away. Daniel stood watching until it disappeared from sight, then walked to his car feeling lighter than he had in years. His phone buzzed 20 minutes later. "Home safe." "Tyler says I'm acting weird. I told him I had dinner with a friend. Not technically a lie." "How did he respond?" "He said, 'What friend?' Because apparently I don't have those, which is depressing but fair." "You have at least one now." "Is that what you are? A friend?" Daniel stared at the message, considering his answer carefully. "I'd like to be more eventually, but friend is a good start. Good night, Daniel." "Good night, Iris." He drove home through streets painted silver by streetlights, the city alive with Saturday night energy. Emma called from her sleepover to say goodnight, asking how dinner went with careful casualness. "It went well," Daniel told her. "Are you going to see her again?" "I am." "Good. You sound happy. Like actually happy, not pretend happy." "I am happy." "Then I'm happy too. Love you, Dad." "Love you too, sweetheart." Sunday morning brought unexpected complications. Daniel was making breakfast when Jennifer called, apologetic but urgent. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you on a weekend, but we have a situation with the Riverside Community Center." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "The building inspector found code violations. Major ones. The renovations can't continue until they're addressed, and it's going to cost significantly more than budgeted." "How much more?" "Initial estimate is another $3 million, maybe more." Daniel closed his eyes. The foundation could cover it. That wasn't the issue. But the timing felt loaded with implications. Who knows about this? The center's director, the construction team, and the inspector. It'll be public record by Monday. "Keep it quiet until I can talk to Carol. I don't want this becoming a media circus." "Understood. There's one more thing." "What?" "One of the volunteers has been advocating for the inspector to show leniency, arguing that the center serves a vulnerable population and that shutting down construction would hurt the community. She's been quite vocal." Daniel didn't need to ask who. "Iris." "Yes, sir. Carol mentioned she's been very involved in trying to find solutions." Of course she was, fighting for the center, for the kids, for her community, with the same fierce dedication she brought to everything that mattered. "Thanks for the heads up, Jennifer. I'll handle it." "Monday morning soon enough?" "Monday morning is fine." He hung up and stared at his cooling eggs, appetite gone. This was going to be complicated. The center needed help, and he had the resources to provide it. But helping now, in the wake of his dinner with Iris, would look like exactly what she'd accused him of: throwing money at problems, trying to fix things, using his wealth to smooth over complications. But not helping would mean the center's work suffered, that kids lost programming they depended on, that Iris's volunteer efforts went to waste. There was no good answer, just competing priorities and the certainty that whatever he chose, someone would question his motives. Emma found him still sitting at the table an hour later, breakfast untouched. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Work stuff. Nothing you need to worry about." "Does it involve Iris?" "Indirectly." Emma sat down across from him. "You're going to help anyway, aren't you? Even if it makes things complicated?" The center needs it. The kids need it. And Iris will think you're doing it for her. Maybe, probably. But you're not. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Yes. Then tell her that. Mom always said that the truth might not fix everything, but lies definitely break everything. Daniel looked at his daughter, this 9-year-old philosopher, and felt a surge of love so strong it was almost painful. When did you get so wise? I keep telling you, I've always been wise. You're just finally paying attention. Monday morning, Daniel called Carol before heading to the office. She sounded exhausted, defeated, like someone who'd been fighting a losing battle and finally run out of energy. Mr. Hayes, I was going to call you today. The inspector's report is devastating. We're looking at a complete halt on construction, and without that funding cycle completing, we can't access the next round of grants. This could shut us down. What if the foundation covered the violations? Silence. Then, that would be, that's a lot of money. $3 million, maybe more. I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering, but I need your discretion. I don't want this becoming a publicity opportunity or a story about Billionaire swoops in to save the day. Of course, absolutely. But why? Why would you do this? Because the center matters. Because the work you do matters. Because kids who need safe spaces and good programs shouldn't suffer because of building code bureaucracy. Mr. Hayes, Daniel, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept the help. Say you'll keep fighting the good fight. That's enough. After they hung up, Daniel sat in his car outside the office building, knowing what came next. He called Iris. She answered on the third ring. Daniel, is everything okay? I need to tell you something about the community center. Her voice sharpened with concern. What about it? There are code violations, major ones. Construction's halted until they're fixed. I know, I've been on the phone with Carol all weekend. We're trying to figure out solutions, but it's bad, Daniel. Really bad. The foundation is going to cover the costs. All of them. Silence stretched long enough that Daniel checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Iris? You're doing this because of me. Her voice was flat, carefully controlled. I'm doing this because it needs to be done. You could have done it last week, last month, any time before you knew I volunteered there. The violations just came to light. I found out yesterday. And you're making the decision today, immediately. No board approval, no process, just Daniel Hayes writing a check because, why exactly? Because the center serves kids who need it. Because shutting down construction would hurt people who are already struggling. Because it's the right thing to do. And the timing is just coincidence. I didn't plan the inspection, Iris. I didn't create the violations. I'm just responding to a need. A need at a center where I volunteer. Where you've been showing up, where we keep running into each other. Her voice cracked slightly. Don't you see how this looks? How it feels? I see how it could look, but I'm asking you to trust that my motives are genuine. Trust. We've known each other less than 2 weeks, and you're asking me to trust that a multi-million-dollar decision has nothing to do with trying to impress me or manipulate me or what? Buy you? Is that what you think this is? I don't know what to think. You show up in my world, you take interest in the places I care about, and suddenly money starts flowing and problems start solving, and I'm supposed to believe that's all just coincidence and good intentions? Daniel gripped the phone tighter. What do you want me to do? Let the center struggle because helping it might make you uncomfortable? Let kids lose programming because I'm worried about optics? I want you to understand that this is exactly what I was afraid of, that your money would complicate everything. That I'd never know if things were happening because they should or because you were making them happen. And I want you to understand that I can't turn off who I am. I can't stop having resources just because it makes you uncomfortable, but I can choose how I use them, and I'm choosing to use them for good. But whose good, Daniel? The center's or yours? The question hit like a slap. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's honest, which is more than I can say about this whole situation. Iris, I need to go. I'm at work and I can't do this right now. When can we talk? I don't know. I need time to think. The line went dead. Daniel sat in his car outside his office building, the phone still pressed to his ear, feeling like everything he'd been building had just collapsed. He'd done the right thing. He knew he had. The center needed help, and he could provide it. Simple equation. But Iris was right too. The timing was suspect. The optics were terrible. And no matter how pure his intentions, the end result was the same. His money-solving problems in her world, creating obligations and questions, and complications she'd explicitly said she didn't want. He'd broken Rule 2 less than 48 hours after agreeing to it, and now he had no idea how to fix what he'd broken. The week that followed felt like walking through fog. Everything muffled and unclear, shapes moving in the distance but never quite coming into focus. Daniel threw himself into work with the kind of intensity that had built his fortune, burying himself in spreadsheets and conference calls and strategic planning sessions that required every ounce of concentration he could muster. It didn't help. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart jumped. Every time it wasn't Iris, something inside him sank a little lower. Emma noticed, of course. She had a way of watching him when she thought he wasn't looking, those dark eyes taking inventory of all the things he tried to hide. On Wednesday night, she found him in his study, staring at his laptop screen without really seeing it. "Did you mess it up?" she asked from the doorway. Daniel looked up. "What?" "With Iris. Did you mess it up?" "Why would you think that?" "Because you have that face again, the one you had after Mom died. Like, you're here, but you're also somewhere else, somewhere sad." Daniel closed his laptop. "I tried to help with something she cares about, and she thinks I did it for the wrong reasons." "Did you?" The question was simple, direct, devastatingly honest. "I don't know. Maybe part of me did, but mostly I just saw people who needed help and knew I could provide it." Emma came into the room, curling up in the oversized chair by the window. "Mom used to say that people have to want help before you can give it. That forcing it on them, even for good reasons, just makes them feel small. Your mother was very wise. So maybe you should ask Iris what she actually wants instead of deciding for her. She won't talk to me." "Have you tried?" Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolled to his conversation with Iris. The last message was his from Monday. "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" Delivered, read, unanswered. He'd sent 3 more texts over the following days. Short messages, not pleading but open. Each one read, none answered. "I've tried," he said quietly. "Then maybe you need to try harder, or try different, I don't know." Emma picked at a loose thread on the chair cushion. "All I know is you were happy after your dinner with her, really happy, and now you're sad again, and I don't like seeing you sad." "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just figuring things out." Adults always say that when they're sad, but don't want to admit it. She wasn't wrong. Thursday brought an unexpected call from Carol Washington. Her voice was bright with relief and gratitude, completely oblivious to the personal complications her news carried. "Daniel, I wanted to thank you again. The Foundation's contribution, it's changing everything. We've already started addressing the violations, and the inspector says we should be back on track within 2 weeks. That's good news. It's incredible news. The kids are so excited. We're planning a celebration when construction resumes, and I really hope you'll come. Bring Emma if you'd like. Let her see the impact her father's making." Daniel's chest tightened. "I'll check my calendar. There's something else. Iris asked me not to tell you this, but I think you should know." Carol paused. "She's been distant this week, quiet. She showed up for her volunteer shift, but didn't engage the way she usually does. When I asked if everything was okay, she said she needed to focus on her brother and might need to reduce her hours here. She's pulling back. From the center, from the kids she loves working with. And I can't help but feel like it has something to do with the foundation grant." Carol's voice softened. "What happened between you two?" "I complicated things. Used my resources in a way she interpreted as manipulation." "Was it manipulation?" "No, but I can see why she'd think so." "Daniel, I've known Iris for 2 years. She's one of the most guarded people I've ever met. Builds walls so high you'd need scaffolding to see over them. But she's also fair. If you explain yourself, really explain, she'll listen. She won't take my calls. Then don't call. Show up, face to face, where she can see your eyes and know you're being honest. That feels like ambushing her. Or it feels like fighting for something that matters. Your choice." After Carol hung up, Daniel sat with the weight of that choice pressing down on him. He could respect Iris's silence, give her the space she seemed to want, let this thing between them die quietly before it ever really lived. Safe, respectful, cowardly. Or he could show up, risk rejection, risk making things worse, risk proving every one of her fears about him correct. His phone buzzed. Richard, texting a photo of a news article. Hayes Foundation saves community center. Billionaire's generosity prevents closure. Below it, thought you wanted to keep this quiet? Daniel swore under his breath. Someone had leaked it, probably the inspector or a construction worker. Someone who saw a good story and couldn't resist sharing. Now it was public, complete with his name in the headline and speculation about his motivations. He clicked through to the article. The coverage was mostly positive, praising his philanthropy, highlighting the center's importance to the community, including quotes from Carol about the foundation's impact. But there, buried in the fourth paragraph, was the complication. Hayes has been spotted at the center multiple times in recent weeks, sparking questions about his personal interest in the facility's operations. Nothing explicitly wrong, nothing even particularly scandalous, but enough to confirm every suspicion Iris harbored about his motives. His phone rang. Iris. Daniel answered before the second ring. Hello? Did you see the article? Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the anger underneath. Just now, Iris, You didn't what? Didn't know it would become public? Didn't think people would connect dots? Didn't consider how this would look? I asked Carol to keep it quiet. Someone else leaked it. And you're surprised? Money this size doesn't stay secret, Daniel. Never does. And now everyone at the center is looking at me differently, wondering if I'm the reason you suddenly took such an interest. If I'm sleeping with you for foundation money, that's absurd. No one who knows you would think that. You'd be surprised what people think when a billionaire starts writing checks. Suddenly, everyone's got theories, everyone's got opinions, and I'm the one caught in the middle trying to explain something I don't even understand myself. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. I know I messed up. I should have talked to you before making the decision, should have considered how it would affect you personally, not just the center generally. You should have, but you didn't, because you're used to making decisions and having everyone be grateful. You're not used to someone questioning your motives or pushing back on your generosity. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me honestly, if we hadn't had dinner Saturday night, would you have approved that funding so quickly? Daniel opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. The honest answer was complicated. Yes, he would have approved it eventually. The center needed it, and that's what the foundation existed for. But immediately? $3 million released with a single phone call? Without board review or additional due diligence? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, Iris said quietly. You bent your own rules for me, changed your process. And now I have to live with knowing that every kid who benefits, every program that runs, every improvement that happens, it's all tangled up with whatever this is between us. Would you have preferred I let the center suffer? I would have preferred you treat me like an equal instead of a problem to solve. I would have preferred honesty over grand gestures. I would have preferred, her voice caught, I would have preferred not to care about you at all. But it's too late for that now. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Iris, I have to go. Tyler's home from school and I need to help with his college applications. Can we talk? In person? I don't know if that's a good idea. Please, just give me a chance to explain face to face, not over the phone where everything gets lost in translation. She was quiet for so long Daniel thought she'd hung up. Then, Saturday, 2 o'clock, Riverside Park, by the fountain. If you're late, I'm leaving. I'll be there. The line went dead and Daniel sat holding the phone, feeling like he'd been granted a reprieve he didn't deserve but desperately needed. Friday crawled by with agonizing slowness. Daniel canceled afternoon meetings, delegated urgent decisions to Richard, and left the office early to pick up Emma from school. She climbed into the car with her usual energy, backpack bursting with papers and projects, already talking before her seatbelt clicked. Sophie's mom invited me for a sleepover tomorrow, but I said no because I thought maybe we could do something together. You and me. But if you have plans with Iris, I can go to Sophie's instead because her mom promised not to be weird this time. Daniel pulled into traffic. I do have plans with Iris, but they're just in the afternoon. We could do dinner. Just us? Really? Like go somewhere. Anywhere you want. Emma's face lit up. Can we go to that noodle place? The one with the big bowls and the dumplings?
Chen's kitchen? Absolutely. Yes. She pumped her fist. Okay, so you meet Iris in the afternoon, make up with her, or whatever adults do when they fight, then we have noodles for dinner. Perfect plan. What makes you think we fought? Dad, I'm 9, not stupid.
You've been moping all week and she finally called yesterday and you looked like someone who just got grounded. Obviously, you fought. We didn't fight exactly. We just had a disagreement about boundaries. About you helping the community center? Daniel glanced at her. How did you know about that? It was in the news. Mrs. Chen showed me the article. She said you were being very generous. And what did you think? Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to important questions. I think you were trying to do a good thing, but maybe you didn't think about how it would make Iris feel, like when you buy me stuff without asking if I want it. And I feel bad saying no because you're trying to be nice, but really I just wanted you to ask first. The comparison was uncomfortably accurate. That's very perceptive. I'm telling you, I'm wise. You should listen to me more often. That night, after Emma went to bed, Daniel found himself in Catherine's study, a room he'd kept exactly as she'd left it, books on the shelves, papers on the desk, reading glasses folded beside her favorite pen. He sat in her chair and felt the familiar ache of her absence. I don't know what I'm doing, he said to the empty room. I thought I was helping, thought I was being useful, but I just made everything more complicated. The silence didn't answer, but somehow sitting there helped. Catherine would have known what to do, would have navigated this with grace and wisdom, would have found the right words to explain his intentions without diminishing Iris's concerns. But Catherine was gone, and Daniel had to figure this out himself. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of perfect spring day that made the whole city feel alive and optimistic. Daniel dressed carefully, casual, but not too casual, presentable, but not trying too hard, and arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes early. The fountain sat in the center of a circular plaza, water cascading down stone tiers into a pool where children threw pennies and made wishes. Benches ringed the area, most occupied by families enjoying the weather, and Daniel chose one with a clear view of the main path. At exactly 2 o'clock, Iris appeared. She was wearing jeans and a light jacket, her hair pulled back, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She spotted him immediately and walked over with measured steps, sitting on the far end of the bench, with deliberate distance between them. Hi, Daniel said. Hi. She took off her sunglasses, and he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. You look nervous. I am nervous. Good. You should be. But there was no venom in it, just tired honesty. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the fountain, the playing children, the normal life unfolding around them. I'm sorry, Daniel started, for not considering how the foundation grant would affect you personally, for moving too fast, for not asking what you wanted before deciding what you needed. I know you are. But you're still angry. I'm not angry. I'm scared. Iris turned to face him. Do you know what it's like to spend your entire adult life fighting for every inch of ground? Working 2 jobs, counting pennies, saying no to things you want because someone else needs something more? To build your whole identity around being self-sufficient because depending on anyone else is too risky? I can imagine. No, you can't. You can sympathize. You can try to understand, but you can't actually know what it's like. And then you come along with your billions and your good intentions, and suddenly things that seemed impossible become easy. Problems I've been struggling with for years get solved with a phone call, and I don't know whether to be grateful or terrified. Why terrified? Because what happens when you get bored? When the novelty wears off and you move on to your next charitable cause or your next interesting person, those problems you solved, they're still my problems. That dependency you created, I'm still stuck with it. But you get to walk away clean. Daniel absorbed this, understanding for the first time the full weight of what his money represented to her. Not opportunity, not security, but potential abandonment on a catastrophic scale. I'm not going to get bored, he said quietly, and I'm not going to abandon you. You can't promise that. No one can. You're right. I can't promise the future, but I can promise today and tomorrow and every day after that until you tell me to stop. Iris looked away, blinking against tears she clearly didn't want to shed. This is so hard. Being with you is like standing on a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying, and I can't tell if I'm about to fly or fall. Then let's step back from the cliff. Let's go slower, be more careful. You set the pace and I'll follow it. You're not good at following. I'll learn. A small child ran past, chasing a balloon that had escaped her grasp. Her mother followed, laughing, and they both collapsed on the grass in giggles. Iris watched them with something wistful in her expression. Tyler asked me about you, she said. He wanted to know who I had dinner with last Saturday. I told him a friend, and he didn't believe me. Said I don't have friends, which is depressingly accurate. What did you tell him? The truth. That I met someone unexpected, someone complicated, someone I'm not sure I'm brave enough to let in.
And what did he say? He said I'm always brave about everything else, so why not this? Iris smiled slightly. 17-year-olds think they know everything. Sometimes they do. Sometimes. She turned back to Daniel. If we do this, if we really try this, I need you to understand something. I can't be your project. I can't be the thing you fix to feel good about yourself. I need to be your equal, even when the bank accounts say otherwise. You are my equal. Then treat me like it. Ask before you help. Listen before you solve. Trust that I know what I need, even if it's not what you think I should want. I can do that. Can you? Really? Because your instinct is to take charge, to make things happen, to use your resources to solve problems. That's who you are. And I'm asking you to fight that instinct when it comes to me. Daniel considered this carefully. She was right. Problem solving was hardwired into him, had been since long before he made his first million. The urge to fix, to improve, to make things better was as fundamental as breathing. I can try, he said honestly. I can't promise I'll always get it right, but I promise to try, to listen when you tell me I'm overstepping, to course correct when I mess up. That's all I'm asking. Try. She shifted on the bench, closing some of the distance between them. Not touching, but near enough that he could feel her warmth, catch the faint scent of whatever soap she used. Tell me about Emma, she said. Really tell me. Not the proud father version, but the complicated truth. So Daniel did. Told her about the nightmares Emma still had sometimes. Dreams of her mother slipping away no matter how tightly she held on. About the way she'd become fiercely independent, terrified of needing anyone too much. About the guilt he carried for not being enough, for not being able to fill the hole Catherine's death had left. She's amazing, he said. Stronger than I ever was at 9, braver than I am now. But she's also just a kid who lost her mom and is trying to figure out how to be okay with that. Does she know about me? She knows I met someone. Someone who makes me think about things differently. Someone who challenges me in ways I didn't know I needed. That's a lot of pressure for a second date that hasn't even happened yet. Is this a second date? Iris looked at him, really looked, and something in her expression softened. I don't know what this is, but I'm willing to find out. That's enough. That's more than enough. They sat together as the afternoon stretched long and golden, talking about smaller things, her brother's college applications, Emma's upcoming school play, the small dailiness of life that forms the foundation beneath the dramatic moments. And slowly, incrementally, the tension eased into something more comfortable. I should go, Iris said eventually. I told Tyler I'd help him with his essay for State University. He's applying for their engineering program. That's wonderful. He must be excited. Terrified, actually. He's never been anywhere but here. The idea of leaving, of being on his own, it scares him. But he's doing it anyway. Because he's brave. Braver than me. Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he took her hand. You're the bravest person I know. You're just brave about different things. Her fingers interlaced with his, the contact simple but electric. I'm not brave about this. About you. I'm terrified. Me too. Good. That means we're both paying attention. They stood, hands still linked, and walked slowly toward the park entrance. Daniel's car was parked on the west side, Iris's bus stop on the east, their paths diverging. Can I see you again? Daniel asked. Soon? How soon? Tomorrow. Emma and I are having dinner at Chen's kitchen. Join us. Let me introduce you properly, not as some abstract concept, but as a real person. Iris hesitated. Meeting your daughter feels significant. It is significant, but if we're doing this, really doing it, she should know you, and you should know her. What if she doesn't like me? She will. And if by some miracle she doesn't,
We'll figure it out together.
Iris bit her lip, clearly torn. Okay, yes. What time? 6 o'clock. I'll text you the address. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for showing up today, for not giving up when I pushed you away. Thank you for giving me another chance. They separated at the park gates, moving in opposite directions, and Daniel felt lighter than he had all week. It wasn't fixed. Whatever this was between them was still fragile, still complicated, still weighted with all the things that made them impossible on paper. But it was alive, still growing, still possible. His phone buzzed as he reached his car. Iris, that thing you did at the community center, the foundation grant, I'm still processing it, still figuring out how I feel. But the kids there, the families, they needed it. So even though the timing was messy and the optics were terrible, thank you for caring enough to help. Daniel stared at the message, reading it 3 times, feeling something tight in his chest finally loosen. The center does important work. I'm glad the foundation could support it. And for what it's worth, I'd have approved the grant regardless. You just made me move faster than I otherwise might have. That's either very sweet or very problematic. I haven't decided which. Can it be both? With you, everything seems to be both. He drove home smiling, feeling like maybe, just maybe, they were finding their way toward something that could work. Emma was waiting when he arrived, practically vibrating with barely contained questions. Well, how did it go? Are you still together? Is she coming to dinner tomorrow? Slow down. Yes, it went well. We're figuring things out. And yes, she's coming to dinner tomorrow. Emma threw her arms around him. I knew you could do it. I knew if you just showed up and were honest, she'd give you another chance. When did you become a relationship expert? I watch a lot of TV, remember? Plus, Mom used to tell me stories about how you two met, how you messed up like 1,000,000 times before you figured out how to be a good boyfriend. Your mother exaggerated. She said you showed up at her apartment at midnight with flowers after your first fight because you couldn't stand the idea of her going to bed angry. Daniel smiled at the memory. That part's true. So you've always been dramatic about relationships. At least you're consistent. That night, after Emma was in bed, Daniel sat in his study with a glass of wine, thinking about consistency and change, about who he'd been with Catherine and who he was becoming with Iris. Different people, different circumstances, different challenges. But maybe that was okay. Maybe growth meant letting go of the idea that love had to look the same every time, feel the same, follow the same patterns. His phone buzzed one more time. Iris again. I'm nervous about tomorrow, about meeting Emma. What if I say something wrong? You won't. You don't know that. I know you. You're thoughtful and kind and careful with people's feelings. Emma will see that. I hope you're right. I am. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be good. I promise. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Iris. He sat in the quiet darkness, the city lights twinkling through his windows, and let himself feel hopeful. It was fragile, this hope, built on nothing more substantial than honest conversations and the willingness to keep trying. But it was real. And for the first time since Catherine's death, real felt like enough. Sunday arrived with a kind of nervous energy that made even simple tasks feel monumental. Daniel changed his shirt 3 times before Emma finally intervened, standing in his doorway with her hands on her hips in a pose that was pure Catherine. Dad, you look fine. Actually, you looked fine 2 shirts ago. Stop being weird. I'm not being weird. You're being super weird. It's just dinner. It's dinner where you're meeting Iris. That's not just anything. Emma's expression softened. Are you worried I won't like her? I'm worried about a lot of things. She came into the room and sat on the edge of his bed. Do you like her? Like really like her? Daniel sat beside his daughter, feeling the weight of honesty pressing down. I do. More than I expected to. More than I know what to do with sometimes. Does she make you happy? She makes me feel things I haven't felt in a long time. Happy is part of it, but also challenged, uncertain, hopeful. She doesn't let me hide behind work or money or anything else. She makes me be real. Then I'll like her, Emma said simply. Because you deserve to be happy. And if she makes you happy, that's enough for me. It might be complicated. She has a brother who depends on her, responsibilities that won't go away just because we're together, and we come from very different worlds. Mom used to say that differences make things interesting,
That if everyone was the same, life would be boring.
Your mother was very wise. I know. I got all my wisdom from her. Emma grinned. The good looks I got from you, though, so I guess we're even. Daniel laughed and pulled her into a hug. When did you get so grown up? I've been telling you. I've always been wise. You're just finally noticing. They arrived at Chen's kitchen 15 minutes early, the small restaurant already filling with the Sunday dinner crowd. The owner, Mr. Chen, greeted them with the warmth of someone who'd known them for years, leading them to a booth near the window. Your usual table, Mr. Hayes, and Miss Emma, I have fresh dumplings just for you. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Emma bounced in her seat. Can we get the big noodle bowl, too? Of course, of course. Are you expecting someone else tonight? My dad's friend is coming, Emma said, with emphasis on the word friend that made Daniel both proud and embarrassed. Wonderful. I'll bring an extra menu. As Mr. Chen departed, Emma leaned across the table. So what's she like? Really like? You've told me some stuff, but I want details. She's kind, strong. She volunteers at a community center helping kids even though she works 2 jobs. She puts her brother first always. She's careful with people's feelings, but doesn't let anyone take advantage of her. Does she know you're rich? She does now. She didn't at first. Did that change things? Daniel considered how to answer. It complicated things. Made her worry about my motives, but we're working through it. Good. Because if she only liked you for your money, that would be gross. Iris is the least interested in money of anyone I've ever met. Emma nodded, satisfied. Okay. I think I'm going to like her. At 6 o'clock exactly, the restaurant door opened and Iris stepped inside. She dressed carefully, dark jeans, a soft blue sweater, her hair down and slightly curled. She looked nervous and beautiful and completely out of her comfort zone, her eyes scanning the room until they found Daniel. He stood, waving her over, and watched as she navigated between tables with careful steps. When she reached their booth, her attention immediately went to Emma. Hi, Iris said softly. You must be Emma. I'm Iris. Emma studied her with the frank assessment only 9-year-olds could pull off. Hi. Dad said you work 2 jobs and volunteer at a community center. That sounds really hard. Emma, Daniel started, but Iris held up a hand. It is hard sometimes, she admitted, sliding into the booth across from them. But it's worth it. The kids at the center are amazing. They remind me why it matters. My dad said you have a brother. Is he younger or older than me? Older. He's 17. His name is Tyler. Does he know you're on a date with my dad? Emma? Daniel's face heated, but Iris just smiled. He knows I'm having dinner with a friend. I didn't want to overcomplicate things until I knew if your dad and I were going to keep seeing each other. Are you? Emma asked. Going to keep seeing each other? Iris glanced at Daniel, something soft in her expression. I think so. If that's okay with you. Why wouldn't it be okay with me? Because your dad is your dad, and if he's spending time with me, that's time he's not spending with you. I wouldn't want you to feel like I'm trying to replace your mom or take your dad away from you. Emma's expression shifted, becoming more serious. No one could replace my mom. She was my mom. But that doesn't mean Dad has to be alone forever. He's been sad for a long time, and if you make him less sad, that's good. Iris's eyes glistened slightly. I'm not trying to make him less sad. I'm just trying to be someone he can talk to honestly. Someone who sees him as a person, not just as your dad or as his job. That's what he needs, Emma said with certainty. Someone who makes him be real. Mr. Chen returned with menus, and Iris's eyes widened at the prices. Reasonable by most standards, but clearly more than she usually spent on meals. Order anything you want, Daniel said quietly. It's my treat. We talked about this. I know, but this is dinner with my daughter. Let me do this without it meaning anything except I want to buy you both dinner. Iris met his eyes, seemed to see the sincerity there, and nodded. Okay. Thank you. They ordered dumplings and spring rolls to share, the large noodle bowl Emma loved, and dishes Mr. Chen recommended with enthusiasm. As they waited for food, Emma peppered Iris with questions, and Daniel watched the 2 of them interact with something warm unfurling in his chest. What's your favorite color? Emma asked. Green, like forest green, not bright green. Favorite animal? Elephants. They're smart, and they take care of each other. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Iris paused, clearly not having thought about it. I don't know. I've never really traveled. Maybe somewhere with mountains or the ocean, somewhere that feels big and open. We went to the ocean once, Emma said, before Mom got sick. It was really pretty, but the water was cold. I bet it was beautiful, though. It was. Emma traced patterns on the table with her finger. Dad promised we'd go back someday, when things felt less sad. Maybe we will, Daniel said. This summer, if you want. Emma brightened. Really? Really. The food arrived in generous portions, steam rising from bowls and plates, the aroma making Daniel's stomach growl despite his nerves. They ate family style, sharing dishes and passing plates, and the conversation flowed more naturally than Daniel had dared hope. Iris asked Emma about school, about violin, about her friends. Emma asked Iris about volunteering, about her brother, about what it was like working 2 jobs. Neither of them asked Daniel anything, and he was content to sit back and watch them connect. These 2 people who meant more to him than he'd quite realized until seeing them together. Can I ask you something serious? Emma said to Iris between bites of noodles. Of course. Are you going to break my dad's heart? The question landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading outward. Iris set down her chopsticks and looked at Emma with complete attention. I don't want to, she said carefully. But I can't promise I won't. Sometimes people hurt each other even when they're trying not to. What I can promise is that I'll try my best to be honest with him, to treat him with respect, and to never take what we have for granted. That's a good answer, Emma said, nodding. Better than saying you won't, because that would be a lie, and I don't like liars. I don't like them either. Okay, then I think we're going to be friends. Iris smiled, genuine and warm. I'd like that. They finished dinner with easy conversation and too much food, leaving them pleasantly full and slightly sleepy. As Mr. Chen cleared their plates, Emma excused herself to the restroom, leaving Daniel and Iris alone at the table. She's wonderful, Iris said quietly. You've done an incredible job with her. She's done an incredible job despite me, I think. Don't sell yourself short. She's confident, thoughtful, emotionally intelligent. That doesn't happen by accident. She gets that from her mother. Maybe some of it, but you're the one who's been there every day for the past 3 years. You're the one who's shown up and held space for her grief while dealing with your own. That matters. Daniel reached across the table, taking Iris's hand. Thank you for coming tonight, for being so good with Emma, for giving this a real chance. Thank you for including me, for trusting me with someone so important to you, Emma returned, catching their linked hands and grinning. You guys are cute, just so you know. Emma, what? You are. It's a fact. They left the restaurant into the cool evening, bellies full and spirits lighter. Daniel's car was parked nearby, and they walked together slowly, none of them quite ready for the evening to end. Can Iris come over? Emma asked suddenly. Just for a little while? I want to show her my room. Daniel looked at Iris. You don't have to. I'd like to, Iris interrupted. If that's okay. I promised Tyler I'd be home by 9, but I have time. So they drove to Daniel's house, Emma chattering the whole way about her stuffed animal collection and her art projects and the book she was reading. When they pulled through the gates and the house came into view, Iris went very quiet. This is where you live? She asked softly. It's too big, Daniel admitted, but Emma loves it, and I haven't had the heart to downsize. Too big, Iris repeated, staring at the sprawling structure with its perfect landscaping and security gates. Daniel, this isn't a house. This is an estate. It's just where we sleep. Just where you sleep, she echoed, and he could hear the distance creeping back into her voice. But then Emma grabbed Iris's hand. Come on, wait until you see my room. Dad let me paint one wall purple, and Mom would have hated it. But it's perfect. They went inside, and Daniel watched Iris take in the marble entryway, the sweeping staircase, the artwork that cost more than most people made in a year. He saw her shoulders tense, saw her building walls again, and silently cursed himself for not thinking this through. But Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, pulling Iris up the stairs and down the hall to her room, which was a cheerful chaos of creativity and comfort. Here, surrounded by Emma's personality rather than Daniel's wealth,
Iris relaxed slightly. "This is amazing," she said, looking at the walls covered in Emma's artwork, the shelves overflowing with books and treasures, the cozy reading nook by the window. "I know, right? Dad says it's organized chaos, but I know where everything is. That's the best kind of organization." They spent 20 minutes in Emma's room looking at art projects and hearing stories about school adventures, until Iris checked her phone and reluctantly said she needed to go. "Tyler's expecting me, and I have an early shift tomorrow." "I'll drive you home," Daniel offered. "The bus is fine. Please, it's late, and I'd feel better knowing you got home safely." Iris looked like she might argue, but Emma interceded. "Let him drive you. Otherwise, he'll just worry all night and be grumpy tomorrow." "Fine, but just a ride, no walking me to my door or anything." "Deal." They said goodbye to Emma, who hugged Iris with unexpected fierceness. "I'm glad my dad met you," she whispered, loud enough for Daniel to hear. He smiles more now. The drive to Iris's neighborhood was quiet, the city transitioning from Sunday evening calm to weeknight preparation. When they pulled up to her building, a weathered structure in desperate need of updating, the contrast to where they'd just been was stark. "This is me," Iris said, unbuckling her seatbelt but not immediately getting out. "I like Emma," Daniel said. "She's special." "She really is. You're lucky to have her." "I know." Daniel turned to face her. "Thank you again for tonight. I know meeting her was a big step." "It was, but I'm glad I did it. She's wonderful, Daniel. And she clearly loves you so much." "The feeling's mutual." He paused. "Can I see you again this week?" "Just us. No pressure, maybe just coffee or a walk?" "I'd like that." "Wednesday?" "I have a break between shifts." "Wednesday works. Text me where and when." Iris reached for the door handle, then stopped. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" "Your house, your life. It's beautiful, but it's also overwhelming. I need you to understand that when I'm there, I feel like I'm visiting another world, a world I don't belong to and never will. You belong anywhere I am. That's sweet, but it's not true. I'm never going to fit into that world. The question is whether you can be okay existing in mine sometimes too." "I can. I want to. We'll see." She leaned over and kissed his cheek quickly, the contact brief but electric. "Good night, Daniel." "Good night, Iris." He watched her walk into her building, waiting until he saw lights come on in a third-floor window before driving away. The contrast between his world and hers sat heavy in his chest, but underneath it was determination. They could bridge this gap. They had to. Wednesday's coffee date turned into a walk through the botanical gardens, the spring blooms putting on a show that made conversation easy and silence comfortable. They talked about everything and nothing, her brother's college anxiety, Emma's upcoming school play, the small victories and frustrations that filled ordinary days. "Tyler got his acceptance letter from state," Iris said, her voice bright with pride. "Full scholarship, just like we hoped." "That's wonderful. You must be so proud." "I am, but I'm also terrified. He leaves in 4 months and then it's just me. I've been taking care of him for 6 years. I don't know who I am without that responsibility." "Maybe that's an opportunity, to figure out who you are when you're not in survival mode." "Maybe. Or maybe I just fall apart without him to focus on." Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her. "You won't fall apart. You're stronger than that." "You don't know that." "I do. Because I've watched you handle impossible situations with grace, because you've built a life out of nothing but determination and love, because falling apart isn't in your nature." Iris blinked against sudden tears. "What if you're wrong?" "Then I'll be there to help you pick up the pieces, if you'll let me." She studied his face for a long moment. "You really mean that, don't you?" "Every word." "This is terrifying. You know that, right? Letting you in, trusting that you'll stay." "I know. It's terrifying for me too." "At least we're scared together." They continued walking, hands brushing occasionally, but not quite linking, both of them aware of boundaries and possibilities in equal measure. Over the next few weeks, they found their rhythm. Coffee dates between Iris's shifts, dinners with Emma at casual restaurants, a weekend afternoon at the community center where Daniel helped paint a mural with the kids while Iris organized supplies. Simple things, ordinary moments, nothing grand or dramatic, But in those ordinary moments, something extraordinary grew. Daniel learned that Iris hummed when she was concentrating, that she had a terrible sense of direction, that she cried at commercials but stayed stoic through actual sad movies. He learned that she was funny in unexpected ways, that she noticed small details others missed, that she gave everyone the benefit of the doubt, even when they didn't deserve it. Iris learned that Daniel was more than his money, that he was thoughtful and patient and surprisingly good at listening when he wasn't trying to solve problems. She learned that he made terrible coffee but excellent pancakes, that he read philosophy books before bed, that he still talked to Catherine sometimes when he thought no one was listening. And slowly, carefully, the walls between them came down. One evening, in late May, Daniel picked Iris up after her shift at the restaurant. She slid into his car, exhausted, her feet aching from 8 hours of carrying trays, but she smiled when she saw him. "Long day?" he asked. "The longest. 3 different tables complained about everything. Someone's kid spilled an entire milkshake on me, and the kitchen was running behind all night. Want to skip dinner? Just go home and rest?" "Actually, I was hoping we could talk, somewhere private." Daniel's heart kicked into a higher gear, but he kept his voice calm. "Okay. My place? Emma's at a sleepover. Your place is fine." They drove in silence, and Daniel tried not to let his anxiety spiral. This could be good news or bad news, a breakthrough or an ending, and he had no way to know until she spoke. At the house, Iris kicked off her shoes and sank into the living room couch, with a sigh of relief. Daniel brought her water and sat beside her, waiting. "I've been thinking," she began, "about us, about how this has been going. Okay? These past few weeks have been good, really good, better than I expected, honestly. But I'm leaving something out, something important that you need to know before we go any further." Daniel's chest tightened. "What is it?" Iris took a breath. "When Tyler leaves for college in August, I'm going to have to make some changes. The apartment we're in now, I only afford it because Tyler contributes from his part-time job. Once he's gone, I won't be able to make rent on my own. I'll have to move somewhere cheaper, probably farther from the city, which means longer commutes, less time for volunteering, maybe even having to give up one of my jobs." "Iris, let me finish. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that my life is about to get harder, not easier, more complicated, not less. And if you're looking for someone without baggage, someone who can fit neatly into your world, I'm not that person. I'm the person who's about to be scrambling to survive again." But Daniel absorbed this, understanding what she was really asking. "What do you want from me, right now, in this moment? I want you to tell me honestly if that's too much. If my reality is too messy for what you're looking for, because I'd rather know now than 6 months from now when I'm already too invested to walk away without it destroying me. Can I say something without you thinking I'm trying to fix things? You can try. Your reality isn't too messy. Your life isn't too complicated. You're not too much of anything except maybe too brave and too stubborn for your own good." He took her hand. "I don't want someone who fits neatly into my world. I want someone who challenges me to exist outside of it. Someone who reminds me that money doesn't solve everything and that the most important things can't be bought." That sounds good in theory. It's not theory. It's what I feel every time I'm with you. You make me better, Iris. Not because you try to change me, but because you hold up a mirror and make me see who I actually am versus who I've convinced myself I should be. Iris's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that whatever changes you're facing, we face them together. Not with me throwing money at problems, but with us figuring out solutions as partners. Maybe that means you move to a different apartment and I help you pack boxes. Maybe it means we have dinner at your place instead of restaurants because that's what fits your budget. Maybe it means I learn to exist in your world instead of always asking you to visit mine." "You do that? Really?" "I want to try. If you'll let me." Iris pulled her hand away, standing and walking to the window that overlooked the garden. "There's something else, something I haven't told you because I was afraid of how you'd react." "Tell me." "When my parents died, they had life insurance. Not a lot, but enough that Tyler and I weren't completely destitute. I put it all in trust for Tyler's education, every penny, because that felt more important than anything I needed. But there were people, relatives, friends of my parents, who thought I was being stupid, that I should use some of it for myself, get my own education, invest in my own future. But you didn't. No, because Tyler was 13 and I was 21, and someone had to make the sacrifice. Someone had to be the adult. She turned to face him. I don't regret it. I'd make the same choice again. But sometimes I wonder who I could have been if I'd chosen differently, if I'd been selfish instead of selfless. You're not selfish for wondering that. Maybe not, but I need you to understand that I'm never going to be the person who puts myself first. Tyler comes first. The kids at the center come first. My responsibilities come first. And if you're with me, you're signing up for someone who will always have competing priorities. Daniel crossed the room, stopping just in front of her. I have competing priorities too. Emma will always come first for me. My company employs hundreds of people whose livelihoods depend on my decisions. I can't just abandon those responsibilities. So maybe instead of competing, our priorities complement each other. Maybe we both understand what it means to put others first, and that understanding becomes the foundation instead of the obstacle. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it might be possible. Iris looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw hope fighting with fear, possibility battling with protection. I'm still scared. Me too. But you want to try anyway? I do. Do you? She nodded slowly. I do. Daniel pulled her into his arms, feeling her relax against him, feeling the walls between them finally, fully coming down. They stood there for a long moment, just breathing together, just being present. Can I tell you something? Iris whispered against his chest. Anything. That first night at the restaurant when you were sitting alone, I almost didn't approach you. I almost just went home. But something made me speak up, made me take the risk. I'm glad you did. Me too, because you're not what I expected. You're better. Daniel kissed the top of her head. You're everything I didn't know I needed. They moved to the couch, curling up together, and talked until nearly midnight about futures and possibilities, about Tyler's college plans and Emma's upcoming play, about the small dailiness of building a life together across the gap between their worlds. When Daniel drove Iris home, she kissed him properly for the first time. Not a quick peck on the cheek, but a real kiss, full of promise and possibility and everything they were too scared to say out loud. Wednesday? She asked as she got out of the car. Wednesday. And Thursday. And Friday if you're free. Greedy. When it comes to you, absolutely. She laughed and headed inside, and Daniel drove home feeling like he was floating. The weeks that followed brought new rhythms and new challenges. Emma's school play arrived, and Iris sat beside Daniel in the auditorium, applauding wildly when Emma took her bow. Tyler's graduation came next, and Daniel attended with Iris, watching her cry proud tears as her brother walked across the stage. I did it, she whispered to Daniel. I got him here. He's going to be okay. You did more than that. You gave him a future. In early June, Daniel took both Emma and Iris to the ocean, renting a beach house for a long weekend that was perfect in its imperfection, sandy floors and sunburns, and Emma teaching Iris to boogie board in the cold Pacific water. They built sand castles and ate ice cream and stayed up late talking around a bonfire, and for those 3 days the complications fell away. One evening, as Emma slept inside and Daniel and Iris sat watching the waves, she rested her head on his shoulder. I could get used to this, she said softly. Good, because I'm planning to make it a regular thing. Tyler leaves in 6 weeks. I know. I'm going to fall apart a little when he goes. I know that too, and I'll be there. Promise? Promise. In late July, they helped Tyler pack for college, filling boxes with clothes and supplies and all the things an 18-year-old needed to start his new life. Iris was holding it together admirably until they were loading the last box into Daniel's car. He'd offered to drive Tyler to campus, making it easier than the bus. And then she broke. Hey, Tyler said, pulling his sister into a fierce hug. I'm going to be fine. You raised me right. I know. I'm going to miss you so much. I'll call every week, maybe more if the food is as bad as everyone says. You better. And you better study hard and make good choices and remember everything you taught me. I will. I promise. Daniel watched them say goodbye, understanding the weight of this moment. 6 years of sacrifice, of fighting and struggling and protecting, coming to fruition. This was what Iris had worked for, what she'd given everything to achieve. The drive to campus took 3 hours, and Tyler peppered Daniel with questions about college, about business, about life. When they arrived and started unloading, Iris appeared from the car, pale but determined. I wanted to help settle him in, she explained. One last time. They spent the afternoon arranging Tyler's dorm room, meeting his roommate, attending orientation sessions. As evening approached and it was time to leave, Tyler hugged his sister one more time. Thank you, he said, for everything. I know what you gave up for me. You were worth it. You'll always be worth it. And Iris? Daniel's good for you. Don't push him away just because you're scared. When did my little brother get so wise? I learned from the best. On the drive home, Iris was quiet, staring out the window at the landscape passing by. Daniel didn't push, just drove and let her process. Finally, she spoke. For 6 years, my whole life has been about Tyler, about keeping him safe and fed and on track, and now he's gone, and I don't know who I am without that. You're Iris. You're still you. But what does that mean? Who is Iris when she's not Tyler's guardian? Daniel pulled over at a rest stop, turning to face her. You're someone who volunteers at a community center because kids need you. Someone who works hard and doesn't complain. Someone who's kind and thoughtful and braver than she knows. Tyler leaving doesn't change any of that. It changes everything. It changes circumstances, but not character. Iris wiped at her eyes. I'm terrified of being alone. You're not alone. You have me. You have Emma. You have the people at the center who love you. You have a whole network of people who care about you if you'd let yourself see it. I'm not good at asking for help. I've noticed, but maybe it's time to learn. She laughed despite her tears. You're not going to make this easy, are you? Not even a little bit. They sat in the parking lot as the sun set, talking through fear and possibility, until Iris felt steady enough to continue the drive home. The next few weeks were an adjustment. Iris moved to a smaller apartment in a neighborhood Daniel had researched carefully, affordable but safe, close to her jobs and the community center. He helped her pack and move, carrying boxes and assembling furniture, existing in her world without trying to change it. Emma came too, excited to help decorate, offering opinions on where furniture should go and which walls needed pictures. The three of them worked together, and by the end of the day, the small space felt like home. It's perfect, Iris said, looking around at the modest living room. Small, but perfect. It suits you, Daniel agreed. That evening, after Emma had gone home with Mrs. Chen, Daniel and Iris sat on her new couch, takeout containers scattered on the coffee table. Thank you, she said, for today, for the past few months, for everything. You don't need to thank me. I do. Because you could have walked away at any point. This hasn't been easy. I haven't been easy. But you stayed. I stayed because I wanted to, because being with you, even when it's complicated, is better than not being with you. Iris turned to face him fully. I love you. I've been too scared to say it, but I do. I love you. The words hung in the air between them, precious and fragile. I love you too, Daniel said. I have for a while now. Since when? Since that first night, maybe, or the community center, or maybe it's been building this whole time and I only just recognized it for what it was. What happens now? Now we keep doing what we've been doing, taking it day by day, figuring it out as we go. That's not very romantic. Maybe not, but it's real, and real is what we need. She kissed him, and it felt like a promise, like a commitment to all the complicated, messy, beautiful possibility ahead of them. 6 months later, on a cold December evening, Daniel found himself back at Chateau Bleu. But this time, Iris sat across from him by choice, wearing a dress he'd seen her debate buying for weeks before finally splurging. Emma was at the next table with Tyler, home from college for winter break, the two of them getting along like old friends. Can you believe it's been almost a year? Iris asked, looking around the restaurant where they'd first met. Best blind date I never had, Daniel replied. You know what I realized recently? That night when I walked over to your table, I was terrified.
but I did it anyway because sitting alone felt worse than risking rejection. I'm glad you were brave. Me too. She reached across the table, taking his hand. We've come a long way. We have. You moved apartments, I learned to ride the bus, Emma and Tyler became friends, you convinced me to volunteer at the center. Where you're terrible at arts and crafts, but the kids love you anyway. They love my wallet, Daniel corrected. They love you. There's a difference. Emma appeared beside their table, Tyler trailing behind. Can we order dessert? Tyler's never had the chocolate souffle here. Of course, Daniel said. Order whatever you want. After they left, Iris shook her head. 6 months ago, Tyler would have been suspicious of you. Now he's asking your advice about internships. He's a good kid. You raised him well. We both did, I think. These past months, having you there to back me up when he's being stubborn, it's made a difference. I'm glad I could help. They finished dinner surrounded by the same elegance that had witnessed their beginning, but everything felt different now. Warmer, more real, more theirs. Outside, after Emma and Tyler had headed home in Daniel's car, with Mrs. Chen driving, Daniel and Iris stood on the sidewalk where she'd once walked away to catch a bus. I have something for you, Daniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Iris's eyes widened. Daniel, it's not what you think. Open it. Inside was a key. It's to my house, he explained. I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not asking you to change your life or give up your independence. I'm just saying that you're always welcome, that there's always a place for you with Emma and me whenever you want it. Iris stared at the key, tears forming. This is a big step. I know, and if it's too much too soon, it's not too much. It's perfect. She closed the box and kissed him. I love you, Daniel Hayes. I love you too, Iris Lane. They stood there on the sidewalk where everything had begun, where a blind date that never happened had led to something neither of them expected, and Daniel understood what Catherine had tried to tell him in those final days, that love didn't diminish with repetition, that letting someone new in didn't mean pushing someone else out, that the heart had room for both memory and possibility. A year ago, he'd been a man sitting alone in an expensive restaurant, waiting for someone who never arrived. Tonight, he was standing on a cold sidewalk with a woman who'd changed everything, who'd walked into his life by accident and stayed by choice, who'd reminded him that the most valuable things couldn't be bought or sold or strategized. They could only be felt. Come on, Iris said, tugging his hand. Let's go home. And for the first time in 3 years, Daniel knew exactly where home was. Not a building or an address, but wherever the people he loved were waiting. Emma with her wisdom and her violin, Tyler with his college stories and his future spreading bright before him, and Iris, brave, stubborn, beautiful Iris, who taught him that sometimes the best things in life came not from planning or wealth or control, but from taking a chance on a stranger who turned out to be exactly what he needed. They walked to his car hand in hand, and Daniel felt something settle deep in his chest. Not the erasure of grief or the forgetting of Catherine, but the expansion of his heart to hold both the past and the future, both the love he'd lost and the love he'd found. Behind them, Chateau Bleu glowed warm and golden, witness to their beginning and now in its way, to their continuation. 2 strangers who met by accident. 2 empty chairs that led to something full and complicated, and wonderfully, impossibly real. And as they drove through the city toward home, toward Emma waiting up to hear about the evening, toward hot chocolate and conversation, and the simple miracle of being together, Daniel finally understood what it meant to have enough. Not wealth or success or security, though he had all of those things, but connection, love, the courage to let someone in despite the risk, the wisdom to know that the best things in life weren't the ones you could control, but the ones you chose to nurture even when they scared you. He had enough. More than enough. He had everything that mattered. And it had all started with a blind date that never happened, and a woman brave enough to ask if his date had stood him up too.